Chapter 2145. Show me the way. Song Qing-shu didn't waste any time. He grabbed her shoulder and rushed to the place where Horazm was staying. Looking at the trees and houses passing by quickly, Madame Jeanne pointed the way and exclaimed, "Your lightness skill is amazing. I've never seen a man so fast." Song Qing-shu almost fell to the ground. Don't use words randomly. The Chinese language is deep and profound. Many words have other meanings. Madame Jeanne nodded, not really understanding. Can't you say that I'm amazing or that I can't say that I'm fast? Song Qing-shu was speechless. He didn't want to talk to her anymore. Are you famous in the Central Plains? Madame Jeanne blinked her big eyes and looked at the man in front of her curiously. Song Qing-shu was shocked. Did she know who he was? Why do you ask? Madame Jeanne answered. First of all, Su Liawu is a top-notch expert. You can suppress him even with me in your arms. Then the old man in the mountain and Shuiwei Grandmaster came in. They're even more terrifying. Not many people are their opponents in a one-on-one fight. But just now you fought against two of them and didn't fall into a disadvantage. You even brought me out of the encirclement of the Mongolians easily. How can someone like this be nameless? At this moment, in the Mongolian ambassador's camp, Su Liawu sat on the bed with a gloomy face and was being bandaged by a doctor. His subordinates all kept quiet out of fear. No one wanted to get into trouble at this time. Did you find out who that mysterious person is? Thinking of that person, Su Liawu felt the pain on his face increase. No, that person seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. We couldn't find out where he came from. One of his subordinates braced himself and answered. Useless, Su Liawu cursed. Then he turned to the old man in the mountain and Shuiwei Grandmaster and asked, "This person's martial arts are so high that it's rare in the world. Did you see anything from his martial arts?" The old man in the mountain shook his head. "I've lived in the West for a long time. I'm not very familiar with the martial arts of the Central Plains. I couldn't see anything." Seeing the prince's gaze fall on him, Shuiwei Grandmaster hurriedly answered, "That person's martial arts are mixed. He seems to be hiding his original martial arts. So, it's hard to tell what his special skill is. Could he be Horazm's man? Impossible. If Horazm had such an expert, we wouldn't have been unaware of it. They wouldn't have gone into hiding like stray dogs all these years." That's true. The Water Moon Great Master nodded. Then it seems that he's from a certain country's diplomatic mission. It could also be someone from the Western Xia's side. Su Liawu's expression was gloomy. In the past, Lian Dan brought a group of experts and was sent to the Western Xia's side. Originally, they thought that they would succeed, but in the end, they died in an unknown manner. Hearing him mention this matter, Shuiwei Great Master's expression changed. They were both under the Mongolian banner, and he had seen Nian Liandan before. He was also extremely wary of the other's martial arts. If they were to fight to the death, he did not have the confidence to win. Of course, he was also confident that he would not lose. But Nian Liandan, with her level of martial arts, had died here without a sound. If it was him, it was likely that he would not be much better off. On the side, the old man in the mountain remained silent, and no change in his expression could be seen. "Investigate. We must find a way to find out this person's identity. Otherwise, this king will not be able to eat or sleep in peace." Su Liawu's tone was filled with anger and fear. After all, with an assassin who could enter and leave his bedroom at will, no one would be able to sleep well. 69 schooled back at this moment, on the other side. Before Song Qing-shu could reply, Madame Jeanne had already continued. "My name is Jeanne Su-san, but you will definitely not tell me your identity." "Oh, why?" In any case, it was boring to travel, so Song Qing-shu did not mind talking more with her. "You have been covering your face since the beginning, clearly to hide your identity. Even after saving me, you did not take off your mask, which proves that you do not want me to see your face." Jeanne Su-san sighed faintly. "We people of Khoresm pay particular attention to repaying kindness, but unfortunately, I have not even seen the appearance of my benefactor." Song Qing-shu laughed softly. "You do not have to deliberately test me. When it is time for you to see, I will naturally let you see." Jin Su-san still wanted to say something, but Song Qing-shu's expression became solemn. "We have arrived." Hurriedly turning around, Jun Susan saw that the consulate of Khoresm was on fire, and there were corpses everywhere inside. A large number of guards in the courtyard were lying in pools of blood, indicating that they had just experienced a terrible battle. Song Qingshu frowned. Are we still too late? The prince and the others should still be alive. Jun Susan checked the courtyard. They should have run in this direction. How do you know? Although Song Qingshu had doubts, he did not delay. Grabbing her shoulder, he chased in the direction she had pointed. Although Khoresm has been destroyed, those who have survived until now are the best of the best in our country. Just now, the old man in the mountain and the Water Moon sect did not come. So, it is not that the prince and the others do not have the power to fight. Jin Susan quickly answered while thinking. Among our companions, there are two generals, Yin Muliang and Zhui Yuanyuan. They are good at tracking and hiding, and just now, they deliberately left a secret signal in that direction that only I can understand. They should be worried that I will not be able to find them when I come back. When she said this, her eyes turned red, and her voice was a little choked, but they do not know that I have fallen into the hands of the Mongolians. If it was not for my benefactor, I am afraid that I would have... Is that person in front of you Yin Muliang or Zhui Yuanyuan? Song Qingshu pointed at the corpse of a man who was lying about 100 feet away. The man was dressed in an exotic style and was not dressed like a Mongolian, so he could only be one of Khoresm's men. It is Zhui Yuanyuan. Jin Susan cried out in surprise and quickly ran over to save the man. Unfortunately, the man was bleeding from all 7 orifices and his eyes were wide open. There was no sign of life. His leg was cut off, and the chest and the back of his head are fatal. A person can attack in 2 directions at the same time. It seems that the person is quite skilled in martial arts. Song Qingshu could not help but be a little surprised. Jin Susan bit her lips, and her eyes were red. It is not a person. It should be the 2 devils of Meng. The 2 devils of Meng? Song Qingshu clearly did not know as much about the experts of the Mongolian side as he did. The 2 devils of Meng are a pair of twin brothers, and they are most proficient in joint attacks. They are one of the 8 bodyguards of Temujin. When Khoresm fought against the Mongolians won every battle, and Temujin was a little arrogant and careless. I used his mentality to set a trap and surrounded Temujin's troops. Countless experts surrounded and attacked them, but in the end, Temujin was still able to escape under the protection of his 8 bodyguards. After that, Temujin did not give us another chance, and Khoresm was also destroyed in one battle. Jun Sushan's face was gloomy, and her voice was full of sorrow. You were actually able to trick Temujin? No wonder the Mongolians thought so highly of you. Song Qingshu could not help but look at her in a new light. Jun Susan did not look proud of herself. According to you people from the Central Plains, even a wise man will make a mistake. I was just lucky that Temujin miscalculated. Chapter 2146. Jun Susan explained. At that time, his kung fu had not reached a high level. Later, there was a rumor that he had practiced some kind of demonic kung fu, but I don't know if it's true or not. The main reason is that our country was destroyed, and we no longer have a chance to get close to Temujin. The only person who knows the truth is the Elder of the Mountain. After all, they organized thousands of assassinations, so they should know if Temujin really has unfathomable kung fu, as the rumors say. Song Qingshu's expression changed. It seemed that he had to find a chance to ask the Elder of the Mountain. But now that he had defected to the Mongols, would it be counterproductive to contact him rashly? Or would it be better to contact Zhang Wuji when the time came and have a relationship with him? The 2 continued forward. Suddenly, Jun Susan exclaimed and ran forward. Handsome man and beautiful woman. Song Qingshu looked over and saw a man and a woman lying crookedly in the grass at the side. The man looked like a gorilla, with thick hair all over his body. He was indeed very rough. The woman was much more beautiful, but she could only be called beautiful. Of course, when compared to the gorilla-like man, she looked even more beautiful. But at this time, the 2 were not breathing. Obviously, they had died here. Their bodies are still warm. They must have died not long ago. Let's hurry and catch up. Maybe we can save your prince. Song Qingshu took her hand and continued on their way. With Madame Jeanne's intelligence, how could she not see this? However, seeing was one thing, and feelings were another. When Horazm was destroyed, a group of loyal warriors, had escorted Prince Zalandin to escape. They had been fighting against the Mongols for so many years, and the conditions were extremely difficult and dangerous. Their companions had either died or disappeared. Now, only a few of them were left. They could be considered to be relying on each other for survival. Seeing so many companions die in front of her, it was inevitable that she would feel sad for them. Song Qingshu sped up. Not long after, he heard the sound of weapons clashing not far away. Looking in the direction of the sound, he vaguely saw an abandoned temple with a large fire. He was not in a hurry to show himself, but quietly approached to check the situation. Zalandin, there's a road to heaven, but you don't take it. There is no door to hell, but you barge in. You don't want to stay in India, but you come to Xixiao with delusions of marrying the princess. Aren't you seeking death? A group of Mongolian warriors was clustered around an extremely refined and elegant man. He was sizing up the few people who were surrounded in the corner of the dilapidated temple with a mocking expression on his face. He was the little devil master, Fang Yiyu, whom he had met in the inn earlier. Prince, Jinsu-san was about to rush over when she saw the faces of those people, but she was stopped by Song Qingshu. Wait, Song Qingshu did not expect Zalandin to be so short. However, his eyes were filled with arrogance, and he had a unique aura. Therefore, even though the people beside him were much taller and more heroic than him, he was still the most eye-catching one. Indeed, one cannot judge a book by its cover. Jinsu-san gritted her teeth, but she didn't do anything in the end. She knew that she was heavily injured, and rushing out would be useless. She could only place her hopes on the man beside her, so she didn't dare to disobey him. Bah, you Mongolians are cruel and heartless. Now, you're openly killing the envoys of other countries in Xixia. You will inevitably become the target of a crusade. Zalandin spat out a mouthful of blood. Although he had already expected the risks of coming here, he still felt that he was at the end of the road when it really came to this moment. Crusade! Fang Yu had a proud expression. Our great Mongolian empire has destroyed countless countries, and our Qieshui army is invincible in the world. Which country is blind enough to dare to crusade against us? A handsome middle-aged man with a head full of white hair next to him smiled and echoed. That's right. Isn't the marriage contest held by Xixia to curry favor with our Mongolian empire? Don't look at the envoys from so many countries. They're all here to accompany us. Princess Yinchuan has long been our prince's concubine. The surrounding people roared with laughter, and the pride on their faces was clear in their words. He didn't use the word princess, but concubine. It seemed that in their hearts, they didn't think that the princess of a small country at the border of Xixia was very noble and worthy of the title of princess. It should be known that Su Yiwu had destroyed countless countries in the West over the years. The concubines and princesses of many countries and city-states were just his bedmates and playthings. In their hearts, the princess was really worthless. Song Qingshu frowned slightly. Who is this white-haired man? Jinsu-san was smart and immediately sensed the dissatisfaction in his tone. She was secretly happy, but she still replied respectfully, He is the guardian of the Devil's Palace, white-haired Liu Shaoji. The gorgeous young woman in red next to him is Hongyan Huajiu. Don't be fooled by her young and delicate appearance. In fact, she is already more than 50 years old. These two people are proficient in the art of plucking. They are cruel, vicious, and extremely lewd. They love to play with young boys and girls. Both of them are highly skilled in martial arts and are backed by Mongolia. She's actually an old witch. Song Qingshu was shocked. The woman was dressed in red and had a flirtatious appearance. Even with his picky eyes, he had to admit that she was somewhat good-looking, but he didn't expect her to have such a past. But on second thought, he felt that it was too strange. It wasn't like he hadn't seen Heavenly Mountain Maiden and Li Qiushui before. In terms of age, they could be her mother, but she looked even younger than her. She's actually a female perverted thief who practices the art of plucking. Song Qing-shu felt disgusted. He wasn't so desperate that he would be interested in such a woman. At this moment, the young woman in red giggled. I thought Zalandin was a hero, but in the end, he could only rely on his tongue. Sigh, I want to capture you and ask the prince to give me a reward to play with, but now I've instantly lost interest. Bawich, Zalandin and the others flushed and cursed. White-haired Liu Shaoji looked at her with some dissatisfaction. Zalandin is so short, and you're actually interested? Jin Su-san explained on behalf of Song Qing-shu in a low voice. White-haired Liu Shaoji and Hua Jiu are a couple. They're husband and wife? Song Qing-shu suddenly widened his eyes. Didn't you just say that they often go out to pluck young men and women? Jin Su-shan's face turned red for the first time. She replied, they do their own things and don't care about these things like ordinary couples. Song Qing-shu stared at her and sighed after a long time. The noble circle is really messy. Hua Jiu giggled. They're short, but that's not necessarily small. What's more, Zalandin has led the rest of the army to fight against the Mongolians for many years. He could be considered an ambitious person. What's wrong with having a taste? Liu Shaoji turned her head and snorted, ignoring him. In the distance, Song Qing-shu was dumbfounded. This woman was really too tough, but her husband actually let her do as she pleased. Was he a cuckold? Jin Su-san secretly spat. Shameless. In the group of wretched laughter, Fong Yu finally spoke. Huaja Ao. Yin Muyang, now that Zalandin is at the end of his rope, why are you still following him? Are you going to die together? Jin Su-san quickly explained. The one on the prince's left with silver hair and purplish-red eyes is my martial uncle, nicknamed Purple-Eyed Devil Huajiao. He is the #1 expert in Choresm. The one on the right is Yin Muyang, who is good at tracking and concealment. On the way to Shixia, we relied on him to erase our traces and escape from the Mongolians. Chapter 2147. This bastard. Jin Su-san trembled with anger. However, the man beside her did not say anything, so she did not dare to expose herself. Yin Muyang still had a glimmer of hope. How is that possible? Madame Jun is smart. How could she be caught so easily? Hua Jiu said with a smile. She is smart, but our lord and the little devil are not bad either. They knew that she would come to spy on us, so they set up an ambush and caught her. Otherwise, why would we chase after you and eliminate you? Jin Su-san looked ashamed and muttered to herself, it's all my fault. If I did not take the risk, everyone would not be so defenseless. Song Qing-shu comforted her. Don't feel guilty. This has nothing to do with you. According to what you said before, even a wise man will make a mistake. The gap between your absolute strength and the Mongolians is too big. They can make countless mistakes, but you can't make a mistake once. This is decided by the power of both sides. It has nothing to do with personal ability. Jin Su-shan's expression became better. Thank you. Hearing this news, Zalandin finally gave up. He sighed and said to Huaja Ao and Yin Muyang beside him, thank you for your company all these years. Now that it has finally come to an end, you guys should surrender. With your martial arts and abilities, I'm sure you can display your strengths in Mongolia. Then he stared at Jiayu of Tongzuan Mountain, who was dying by his feet. It's a pity that you are fatally injured and can no longer join the Mongolians. You can only die with me. Jiayu was a towering man, but now he was crying. It's my honor to die protecting the prince. Song Qing-shu pushed Jin Su-san. It's time for you to go out. Looking at the situation, if they were a little later, they would have lost their courage. If Huaja Ao and Yin Muyang really surrendered, then it would be useless to save them. By then, there would be internal cracks in Choresm, and this potential ally would have no value. Jin Su-san was a smart woman. She didn't ask her what she should do when she went out alone. Instead, she walked out calmly with her head held high. Under the illumination of the surrounding torches, her figure became more and more attractive. Song Qing-shu nodded secretly. Although this woman had big breasts, she was not brainless. Who are you? The people of the Demon Master Palace immediately noticed something strange. Fong Yiyu and the others quickly turned around. When they saw Jin Su-shan's appearance, they couldn't help but be stunned. They couldn't understand why she would appear here. Zalindin and the others were instantly overjoyed. Yin Muyang laughed loudly. I knew it. How could someone as witty as Madame be captured by the Mongolians? Jin Sushan's face was a little hot, but she still walked over as if nothing had happened. Why are you here? Fang Yiyu had too many doubts in his heart and finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Where else would I be? Jin Susan said with a smile. You should be in our prince's bed. On the side, the white-haired Lu Shaoji greedily looked up and down at her full and enchanting curves. She thought that this woman was really a beauty, but it was a pity that she was now his highness woman. In the future, when he was tired of playing with her, he would ask him to give her to him. 678-inch, do you think I'm so easy to catch? The reason why I was caught was because I let you catch me on purpose. Jin Susan deliberately mystified them. Humph, bluffing. Your actions caused your Flower Prince's people to suffer heavy casualties. Is this also within your expectations? Fang Yeyu sneered. Jin Susan secretly sighed. As expected of the little demon master, he always wanted to drive a wedge between them. However, she already had a plan in mind. She said unhurriedly, compared to the goal that can be achieved, this little sacrifice is nothing. What goal? Fang Yeyu's expression changed. He already had a frightening guess. Of course, it's to get close to your prince. Noticing the other's expression, Jin Susan secretly rejoiced. After so many years of fighting and scheming, she already knew the other's suspicious personality. As expected, the moment I was caught, your lecherous prince couldn't wait to have me serve him in bed. That way, I would have the opportunity to be alone with him. In that situation, no matter how many experts he has under him, they wouldn't be able to watch from the sidelines. It would be easy for me to take his life. It's a pity that the whip of God, who terrified all the Western countries, died so easily at the hands of a little girl like me. Hearing that Su Liuwu had died, the Mongolian warriors all looked at each other in shock and whispered to each other. Hiding in the dark, Song Qingshu was secretly impressed, thinking that this Madame Jeanne was indeed a talented person. I immediately pushed her out. In just a few steps, she had already thought of this plan, causing the previously high morale of the Mongolians to be in a state of panic. Nonsense! How could Fang Yiyu not notice that the hearts of his subordinates were wavering? He hurriedly shouted angrily. Not to mention the fact that you were already seriously injured when you were caught. Those handmaidens would definitely search you when they sent you in. Even if you were in your best condition and carried a weapon, you still wouldn't be a match for Prince. With Prince's martial arts, how could you take advantage of him? Hearing his words, the group of Mongolian warriors gradually calmed down. In their hearts, Su Liuwu was like a god of war. Furthermore, he was also a martial arts expert. Back then, the Persian Ming dynasty had sent out all their forces and organized a large-scale assassination, but they still hadn't been able to take his life. Although he had been seriously injured, he had still taken the lives of dozens of top assassins. How could such a person be killed by a woman? Jin Susan pursed her lips and smiled. Little magic master, have you forgotten why I entered Su Liuwu's bedroom? Fang Yiyu's expression changed. Serve him in bed? That's right. Su Liuwu was arrogant about his martial arts and only wanted to conquer his spoils of war. I made my move when he was at his happiest and proudest. Which man would be able to guard against me at that time? As Jin Susan spoke, she glanced worriedly in the direction of Song Qingshu. She had just noticed his disdain for Hua Jiyu and hoped that he wouldn't think that she and Hua Jiyu were the same type of people. Fang Yiyu's heart skipped a beat. If what she said was true, there was indeed a possibility of success. But would Prince Yu really be so careless? If you don't believe me, take a look in Su Liuwu's direction and see if there's a raging fire there. If Su Liuwu dies, you, as his bodyguards, will not be able to escape the blame. According to Temujin's personality, you will definitely be buried with him. I advise you to find a way to survive as soon as possible. Just now, Fang Yiyu and his group had been in high spirits trying to persuade Xianghua, Jia, and Ao. Who would have thought that the tables would turn so quickly? Noticing that it wasn't just the ordinary subordinates, but even experts like White-Haired and Hong Yan had expressions of fear on their faces, Fang Yiyu knew that if he didn't stabilize the morale of the army soon, these people could explode at any time. His mind was like lightning, and he immediately found the loophole in the other party's words. I was almost fooled by you. Even if you really succeeded by luck, there are so many experts in the residence. There's no way you could have escaped. Chapter 2148. How powerful! Fang Yiyu sneered. He didn't believe her at all. He had also participated in the operation to capture her outside the hostel. Although Madame Jeanne's martial arts were good, her strength was limited. What do you think about being able to leave safely from the joint attack of the old man of the mountain and the Shui West sect? Madame Jeanne stood with her hands behind her back. She really had the demeanor of a master, but her face was a little hot. She thought, he won't blame me, right? You're playing tricks. Fang Yiyu snorted coldly. With a wave of his hand, 5 Mongolian warriors quickly surrounded her in the middle and attacked her. Zalandin, Huaja Ao, and the others hurriedly warned, be careful. Ji Yinan and Xiao Shu died under the siege of these 5 people. Unfortunately, they were seriously injured and couldn't help her at all. Madame Jeanne's heart skipped a beat. She had been fighting against the Mongolians for a long time. How could she not recognize these 5 people? They were the 5 evils of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth of the 10 great evil gods of the Devil Master Palace. Although they weren't as powerful as the first 2 of the 10 great evil gods, they were still first-class masters. Even if she wasn't injured, she could only avoid the 5 people's joint attack. Now that she was injured, she would probably be killed within 3 moves. Just when she was at a loss, a voice suddenly came to her ears. Reach out and hit them. She didn't know why, but when she heard this voice, her panicked heart instantly calmed down. She instinctively waved her hand. Even she felt that her hand was weak, but she knew that since the other party made such a request, he must have his reasons. A few screams sounded. When Madame Jeanne came to her senses, she found that the 5 great evil gods of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth had fallen to the ground and were no longer breathing. This time, even she was shocked. After a long time, she came back to her senses and took her hand back. In order to hide her embarrassment, she coughed lightly. The Mongolian people were also in an uproar. They didn't expect that the 5 people who were so aggressive just a second ago were all dead in the next second. Even Fang Yiyu was dumbfounded. Even if he faced the 5 evil gods together, it would take him a lot of effort. Who knew that Madame Jeanne could kill them just by raising her hand? The key was that even he didn't see how she did it. In his opinion, the strength and speed of her move were very ordinary. How could she achieve such a high power? Can you see how she did it? Fang Yiyu asked the people around him in a low voice. Young beauty flower Jiyu and white-haired Lu Yaoji frowned. We don't understand either. Could she have used some kind of hidden weapon? I didn't hear the sound of a concealed weapon tearing through the air. Fang Yiyu shook his head and denied this speculation. A burly man at the side said, let us 2 brothers go and test her. Fang Yiyu was overjoyed. Of course I'm relieved that you guys are going to take care of her, but you still have to be careful. She might use poison. He was a meticulous person. From the very beginning, he had been thinking about how Madame Jeanne could kill the 5 experts without making a sound. Excluding hidden weapons, it could only be poison. The burly man nodded and silently walked in the direction of Madame Jeanne. At the same time, there was another burly man who looked exactly like him. In the dark, Song Qingshu noticed that the 2 men were between 60 and 70 years old. Their faces were gloomy, they were tall, and their noses were high and curved. They didn't look like people from the Central Plains. In addition, the 2 men looked exactly the same. It was obvious that they were twins. Song Qingshu immediately realized that they were the 2 devils of Meng, one of Temujin's 8 bodyguards mentioned by Madame Jeanne. 20 since they were bodyguards. Why didn't they stay by Temujin's side? Instead, they were sent out on a mission. It seemed that the rumor that Temujin had mastered the demonic arts was true. He was confident enough to ensure his safety. After a careful look, Song Qingshu noticed that the 2 men were breathing smoothly and their steps were light. It was obvious that their kung fu had reached the point of perfection. The Crazimo expert he saw on the road was killed by the two of them. Seeing the two devils of Meng approaching, Madame Jeanne broke out in a cold sweat. Normally, she could barely handle one of them, but with the two of them working together, she had no chance of survival. The main reason was that they were twins, and they were experts in joint attacks. There were many couples in the world who used the harmonious dual swords, but no matter how close they were, it couldn't compare to the telepathic connection between two people born in the womb. When the two of them worked together, it was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. They could unleash a force many times stronger than a single person. Many famous experts in the West, who were clearly more skilled than either of them, had died under their hands. Throw the hairpin at them. Hearing the warm voice again, Madame Jeanne's panicked eyes immediately calmed down. When she escaped from the Mongolian embassy, she had casually picked a hairpin from a maid and tied it up. She didn't expect it to be useful again so soon. But there's only one hairpin, and there are two of them. Taking out the hairpin, Madame Jeanne was a little hesitant, but as the two of them got closer, she didn't dare to hesitate anymore. She directly threw the hairpin at Meng, seeing that the hairpin was light and fluttering in the air. Meng couldn't help but show a look of disdain. He raised his hand and casually waved it, while his other hand covered Madame Jeanne's entire head. Meng, too, on the other hand, blocked all of her escape routes. The two of them were worthy of being twin brothers. Their cooperation was flawless. Suddenly, a crisp sound came from the hairpin in the air, and it directly broke into two pieces. Then, it suddenly accelerated and shot toward the two of them. The Meng brothers' expressions changed drastically, and they hurriedly retracted their hands to block the hairpin. But in front of the hairpin, their hands were like tofu and were instantly pierced through. Then, under their shocked and frightened eyes, the hairpin instantly pierced through their throats. Previously, when the 5 great evil gods fell, the Mongolian people were in an uproar. Now, when they saw the 2 devils of Meng killed, the group of people immediately became silent. It was really too unbelievable. Madame Jeanne's heart trembled, and she slowly took a step forward. Because she had just killed a few experts in an instant, at this moment, there seemed to be an invisible pressure on her, and the group of Mongolian warriors couldn't help but take a step back. Even Fang Yiyu, Hong Yin, and White Hair subconsciously took a step back. Madame Jeanne couldn't help but feel very happy. In all these years, when had she ever felt so proud? At this time, the spy that Fang Yiyu had sent to investigate had also returned. He whispered, "Little Devil Master, the prince's mansion is indeed in a mess. Now, the experts under his command are moving everywhere, as if they are searching for something." In such a short time, it was impossible for him to rush back to ask, so he could only find a high place to observe and report the situation of the Mongolian embassy. Fang Yiyu's expression changed several times. It was really as Madame Jeanne had described. Could it be that the prince really... Thinking of this, he didn't dare to delay any longer and hurriedly waved his hand. Retreat. The other Mongolian warriors all felt as if they had been pardoned and quickly followed him, disappearing without a trace. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment and didn't continue to make a move. The Mongolians had a large number of people, and it wouldn't be so easy to kill them all. Also, looking at the time, the main force that Su Liuwu sent would arrive soon. The most important thing now was to take the people of Khwarezmi away first. Seeing the Mongolians leave in fear, Zalandin and the others surrounded Madame Jeanne in surprise and joy. Madame has such skills, and we actually didn't know. Chapter 2149. Madame Jeanne's prestige in Khwarezm had been extremely high these years. To some extent, she could be said to be the second in command. However, she had made the decision without asking Zalandin, mainly because the other party's strength was unfathomable. She knew that once the prince knew, he would not have any objections. Zalandin and the others were stunned. They followed her gaze and saw a masked man slowly walking out of the forest. They were not stupid, and they knew Madame Jeanne well over the years. They immediately realized that Madame Jeanne's power must have been due to this person's help. I've already told you Your Khoresm country has already been destroyed. What else is there for me to be interested in? Song Qing-shu snorted in annoyance. Madame Jeanne bit her lip. Although our country was destroyed, we brought our national treasure with us when we escaped. If benefactor is interested, we can give our national treasure to you. Zalanden, Huaja Ao, and the others looked at each other. When did we bring out a national treasure? Song Qing-shu was also stunned and could not help but feel curious. What national treasure? What did Central and Eastern Europe produce? Jewelry or Fergana horses? It couldn't be pandas, right? Madame Jeanne raised her head. Her sapphire-like eyes revealed an inexplicable meaning. Am I beautiful? Song Qing-shu did not understand why she suddenly asked this, but he still nodded. You are very beautiful. Even the most picky person had to admit that she was a great beauty. Her exotic charm added a different kind of charm to her. Back then, I was called the most beautiful woman in Khoresm. Whether it was Temujin, Zulwu, or even our prince, they all wanted me, Madame Jeanne said as she looked at the man beside her. Zalanden could not help but show an awkward expression. In addition, I'm also good at commanding troops and giving advice. I have thwarted the Mongolian plots several times over the years. I wonder if I am worthy of the title of national treasure? Song Qing-shu could not help but laugh. He did not expect her to beat around the bush for so long just to sell herself. It seemed that Western women were indeed more unrestrained. Madam, of course. Pausing for a moment, Song Qing-shu's gaze fell on the curves of her body. Her breasts were perky, her waist was slender, her hips were perky, and her legs were long. He couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. And every part of your body is a treasure. Hearing his praise, Mrs. Jeanne's eyes lit up. Thank you. Zalanden, Yin Muliang, and the others were dumbfounded. How could the military advisor, who had always been unfathomable and incomparably cold and arrogant, sell his beauty like this today? He had never seen this side of her. However, Zalanden was very rational. He guessed that she was using a honey trap, so he didn't say anything despite his doubts. All right, there's no need to flatter me. Let's leave this place first. The Mongolians will soon realize that they've been tricked and come running back. Song Qing-shu noticed the strange gazes from the people beside him. He coughed softly and quickly said. Zalanden seemed to wake up from a dream and hurriedly nodded. That's right, let's go, let's go. The previous battle was too tragic, and he didn't want to go through it again. Mount Tongzuinjia, he was already on the verge of death. Seeing this, he struggled and said, Prince, leave quickly. Don't worry about me. I can't save him in this situation, so I don't want to drag you down. Zalanden frowned and ran over to carry him on his back. You risked your life to save me before. How can I abandon you now? Don't talk. Let's leave this place first. With a big man on his back, his short body seemed to have grown much taller. Prince, Shan Jiayu's tower-like man couldn't help but choke. Zero book how Song Qing-shu threw a 9 revolutions bear snake pill over. Don't worry, he won't die. Shan Jiayu only had external injuries and had lost a lot of blood. With the 9 revolutions bear snake pill, he was able to hang on to his last breath and find a doctor to treat and nurse him back to health. Zalanden was instantly overjoyed. Thank you. Seeing that his expression didn't seem to be fake, Song Qing-shu secretly admired him. No wonder Zalanden's country was destroyed like a stray dog, yet so many people were willing to follow him. His charisma was worthy of the loyalty of his subordinates. Madame Jeanne took the opportunity to tell him about how he saved her. Throughout the process, she looked at Song Qing-shu from time to time, her eyes seemingly glowing. Song Qing-shu felt a little unnatural from her words. In her description, he was like a god descending to the mortal world, more legendary and magical than he actually was. If someone had told them that someone could successfully take a person away under the joint efforts of the Elder in the Mountain, the Shui West sect, and so many experts, they would only think it was a fantasy. However, they had just seen him take care of the Mongolian experts with their own eyes, so they naturally believed Madame Jeanne's description. They kept thanking and praising him. Zalanden's gaze fell on Madame Jeanne, and he seemed to be deep in thought. After so many years, when had he ever seen such a delicate expression from her? What do you plan to do next, Prince? Song Qingshu asked. Zalandin smiled bitterly. I came to Western Xia this time, mainly to contact the eastern countries to deal with the Mongolians. I thought that there were envoys from other countries in Western Xia's territory, so the Mongolians would be cautious. Who knew that they would ignore everything? Song Qingshu felt the same way. Su Liu directly he made a move. It was obvious that he didn't care about Western Xia. It must be because he had the powerful Mongolians to rely on, and Western Xia couldn't really fall out with him. I think you should return to India as soon as possible. The Mongolians won't let this go. I can protect you for a while, but I can't protect you forever. Song Qingshu wasn't lying. He couldn't always put his energy on these people. The Mongolians had so many top experts under them. They could be killed if there was a gap. Zalandin said seriously, Hero, we are already very grateful for saving us once. How we dare to keep troubling you? However, we came here to form an alliance. We carry the hopes of our people. If we go back like this, my subordinates won't see any hope. I'm afraid no one will be able to hold on. In order to win the hearts of the people, there had to be immediate benefits or enough hope. If there was nothing, those subordinates who had followed Zalandin for thousands of miles and lived a difficult life would probably completely lose control. Song Qingshu also understood this. He thought for a moment and said, I'll take you to see a few people first. Next, Song Qingshu brought them to the Jin Kingdom's encampment. Currently, only the Jin Kingdom had the strength to fight against Mongolia. Furthermore, both sides were mortal enemies, so there was no need for them to disguise themselves like the other countries. Knowing that Song Qingshu had arrived, Wanyan Zhongjia ran out happily. It could be seen that she had put on meticulous makeup. However, when she saw Madame Jeanne beside him, her smile immediately froze. She muttered, Where did this foreign woman come from? Song Qingshu, who was drinking tea, almost spat out the water in his mouth. Where did this lass learn these words? Could it be that Shui Pan taught her? Chapter 2150. Song Qingshu was speechless. No, you heard wrong. Although Madame Jeanne didn't think there was anything wrong with what she heard, she now worshipped him like a god. Hearing his words, she suppressed the doubts in her heart. Song Qingshu coughed lightly and introduced them to each other. When Zalandin saw this beautiful little girl, he did not take her seriously. However, when he heard that she could represent the Jin Kingdom, he immediately put away his contempt. Even though he was far away in India, he had heard that the biggest enemy of the Mongolians in the Central Plains was the Jin Kingdom. Therefore, one of the main purposes of his trip to Western Xia was to establish a connection with the Jin Kingdom. Wanyan Zhongjia curled his lips. He thought that he was more like a mascot and couldn't represent the Jin Kingdom. But he also understood that Song Qingshu didn't want to stand in front of the stage, so he acquiesced. As Song Qingshu introduced the two sides, he sent someone to invite Galdan and the others over. He didn't call the people of Western Xia and Qing. This was the result of careful consideration. Western Xia and Mongolia were too close, and they could be threatened by the Mongolian army at any time. For the time being, it was not suitable to break off relations with the Mongolians. He also didn't want to expose his relationship with the Manchurian Qing. Zalandin was overjoyed to hear this. Although the Jin Kingdom was powerful, it was too far away from Khwarezm. But the Dzungar Khaganate was different. It could be said that they were very close to Khwarezm, so there were many areas where they could cooperate. Madame Jeanne blinked her eyes and looked at Song Qingshu. At this moment, she admired him from the bottom of her heart. Not only was his kung fu so high, but he also had such a wide network. He could easily summon the higher-ups of the Jin Kingdom and Dzungar Khaganate. But on second thought, with his kung fu and ability, it would be strange if he couldn't do this. Noticing the look in her eyes, Wanyan Zhongjia suddenly felt a sense of crisis. She hurriedly inserted herself between the two and blocked her eyes. How did you get together? Madame Jeanne immediately sensed her hostility. She was a quick-witted person and immediately understood the reason. She thought that a person like her benefactor would definitely attract the most outstanding women in the world. When she realized this, she did not feel any jealousy in her heart. On the contrary, she felt that it was only natural. Since Khwarazmo still needed the help of the Jin Kingdom, she didn't argue with Wanyan Zhongjie. Instead, she smiled faintly and silently retreated to the side. Wanyan Zhongjie stared blankly for a moment. Now that the other party was acting like this, she felt a bit embarrassed and felt that she had gone too far. Song Qingshu didn't notice that the thoughts of the two women had already changed 1,000 times at this moment. Instead, he roughly recounted what had just happened. Wanyan Zhongjie couldn't help but slap the table and stand up when he heard that the Mongolians had mobilized all their experts to attack Khwarazm's embassy. These Mongolians are too arrogant. It's because the Mongolian army can run amok in the world and destroy countless countries. That gave him confidence, Song Qingshu reminded. You can't be careless in your defense here. The Mongolians might attack you too. Don't worry, I've brought the elites of the loyal army with me. Besides, Mr. Ouyang is also here. If the Mongolians come, they'll all die. Wanyan Zhongjie snorted. Song Qingshu nodded to himself. Having Ouyang Feng here was indeed a relief. Not only was he skilled in martial arts, but he was also good at using poison. No matter how many Mongolian masters there were, it would be useless. Baidu not long after, Galdan also arrived with his men. His original purpose for this trip was to look for allies. Both sides could be said to hit it off. Although Zalandan's power was a little weak now, it had proven that he could cause enough trouble for the Mongolians over the years. Moreover, he had the Indian Mughal dynasty behind him. After some discussion, they decided on military, political, and commercial cooperation. The Jin Kingdom's goods and armaments could flow into Khwarazm through Dzungar Khwarazm, while Khwarazm would import Indian and Western goods and specialties into Dzungar Khwarazm through the Tsong Mountains. After signing the agreement, Galdan and the others returned to their own residence. Worried that something might happen on the way, Song Qingshu even asked Wanyan Zhongjie to send Jin Kingdom warriors to escort them. The Mongolians were searching the entire city, but this was the capital of Xixia after all. It would be a loss of face for them to act like this. So, Yelu Nanxian and Li Qinglu led the people of Class 1 Hall to stop them. The two sides fell into a stalemate. Song Qingshu asked Zalandan to take this opportunity to leave. Since they had already signed the agreement, most of the purpose of this trip had been accomplished. Zalandan had no reason to continue staying. He immediately led his subordinates and left the capital of Xixia that very night. Song Qingshu was chatting with Wanyan Zhongjie in the embassy when someone suddenly reported that someone wanted to see him. When the person came in, he couldn't help but be startled. Why haven't you left? The person who came was graceful and beautiful, with skin as white as snow. Who else could it be but Madame Jeanne? Madame Jeanne bowed and explained, if the Mongols knew that the prince had escaped the city, it would definitely be easier to kill him in the wilderness than in the city. Therefore, I must continue to stay in the city in the name of the Khwarazm diplomatic mission and create the illusion that he is still here. This will numb the Mongols and buy enough time for the prince and the others. Wanyan Zhongjie couldn't help but say, but if that's the case, won't you all die 9 out of 10? Staying here alone and facing the powerful Mongols would be no different from sending them to their deaths. According to a saying on your side, a gentleman will die for his bosom friend. The prince has treated us well, and he is the last hope of the Khwarazm. In order to cover his escape, any sacrifice is worth it. Madame Jeanne smiled. It's not just me. Shanqiu also volunteered to stay behind and cooperate with me. That person was heavily injured. If he didn't die, he should be thanking the heavens. But you are different. You are the second in command of the Khwarazm, and you are so beautiful. Are you really willing to stay behind and die? Wanyan Zhongjie asked. In the past, I might have hesitated, but now... Madame Jeanne didn't say anything else. She just looked at Song Qingshu with a smile. Wanyan Zhongjie pouted and snorted. He turned around and left. He hadn't seen her for half a day, and now there was another woman who would throw herself at him. Was this guy an aphrodisiac? Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. There was no way he could explain this to her. After Wanyan Zhongjie left, he calmly looked at the tall and voluptuous woman in front of him and said, You didn't stay here just to buy time for your prince, did you? Madame Jeanne smiled sweetly. A trace of shyness flashed in her eyes. Young master, you have done so much for our Horazm. I am unable to repay you. If you don't mind, I am willing to be your servant and serve you. Chapter 2151. Madame Jeanne didn't try to explain. If someone else asked me, I would definitely deny it. But since you asked, I dare not hide it from you. The prince asked me to stay here not only to buy time for him, but also to settle the details of the alliance. After all, after he returns to India, he will be thousands of miles away from here. It will be inconvenient for him to communicate with the countries in the Central Plains. After a pause, she continued, in addition, I can also contact Xixia, Qing, Song, and other countries. It will be better if I can get them to join the alliance. Madame Jeanne looked at Song Qing Shu with watery eyes. Of course, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have to stay here. I didn't lie to you when I said I would repay you. At this time, Song Qing Shu faintly heard the noise coming from the street. He said in a deep voice, I still have something to do. You stay here and recuperate. With the protection of the Jin and Xixia, the Mongols won't dare to attack you again. Madame Jeanne nodded. Yes, you can come to my room if you want. Song Qing Shu's heart skipped a beat, thinking that this Western woman was really proactive. However, with her unique temperament and outstanding beauty, she didn't sound cheap at all when she talked about it. Instead, it was filled with endless temptation. Of course, Song Qing Shu was not in the mood to think about these things at the moment. He went to Wanyan Zhongjie to entrust some matters to him. After that, he rushed to the Western Xia Imperial Palace. The Mongolians had made such a big move tonight, so he had to inform Mu Wanqing and the others about it. When he arrived at the gate of the Imperial Palace, Song Qing Shu didn't use his lightness skill to sneak in. Instead, he entered through the gate. Now that the Xixiao Imperial Palace was his territory, sneaking in was a bit embarrassing. He showed the highest level token to the guards. The guards didn't dare to ask his identity and let him pass. Song Qing Shu went all the way to the Imperial Study. He had learned from the guards that the Empress was dealing with the memorials in the Imperial Study. After entering the room, he found a slender girl lying in the middle of a pile of memorials. The candlelight fell on her body, making her look as beautiful as ever. Moreover, she looked even more innocent because she had fallen asleep on the table. Arriving near the desk, Song Qing Shu saw the exhaustion between the young girl's eyebrows. His heart was filled with pity. He was outside having fun, but she was dealing with these heavy documents. He couldn't help but feel guilty. Who is it? Even in her sleep, Mu Wanqing was still very vigilant. She felt the strangeness around her and woke up immediately. The sleeve dart in her hand was aimed at the other party. You're already an empress, yet you're still hiding poison arrows in your sleeves. If the ministers find out about this, they'll write a few books about this, Song Qing Shu said with a smile. Brother Song, seeing the lover of her dreams so close to her, Mu Wanqing was pleasantly surprised and confused. She subconsciously rubbed her eyes. Am I still dreaming? Song Qing Shu gently pulled her into his arms. Do you feel more real now? Feeling the familiar embrace and scent, Mu Wanqing finally knew that all of this was not fake. She pressed her face against his chest and listened to his steady heartbeat. She called out softly, Song Qing Shu, it's already so late. Don't read these memorials anymore, Song Qing Shu said with a pained heart. Okay. Mu Wanqing smiled sweetly, like the most obedient young lady. Why did those eunuchs and palace maids let you fall asleep like this? What did they do? Song Qing Shu was a little angry. Mu Wanqing said with a smile, it's not their fault. I'm not used to being served by others, and I don't like being stared at all times, so I chased them out. Then go back to your chambers and sleep. You're already so tired. Song Qing Shu stretched out his hand and stroked the few strands of messy hair on her temples. 168 Mu Wanqing shook her head. Right now, the city is very chaotic. Sienna and Qinglu took the people from Class 1 Hall to deal with it. I have to wait for them to come back to discuss it. The uproar in Mongolia is because of the Horazmer incident. Song Qing-shu roughly explained what happened that night. So that's how it is. Mu Wanqing suddenly understood. She then called a servant girl in and had her bring the news to Yelu, Nanxian, and the others. The two women knew the whole story and naturally knew how to deal with it. After the maid left, Song Qing-shu came out from behind the screen. Now you should be able to rest in peace. I'll take you back to your chambers. As he spoke, he carried her in his arms. Mu Wanqing's body was very soft. She couldn't feel any weight in his arms, which made her even more pitiful. No. Mu Wanqing's face was slightly red. There are many people on the way to the chambers. It's easy for rumors to spread like this. Song Qing-shu had a depressed expression. At worst, I'll disguise myself as Li Longzhua. When the emperor goes to the empress chambers, no one will dare to say anything. He has been lying in the palace recovering all day. Right now, everyone has tacitly accepted the fact that he is heavily injured. If he suddenly appears in front of people full of energy, it will easily cause some ambitious people to have other thoughts. Mu Wanqing bit her lip. Also, when the emperor goes to the empress room, the greeting room, and the living quarters, there will be official records. I feel it's strange, and I don't like that feeling. So it's like that. Song Qing-shu knew that what she said was somewhat reasonable. As if hearing the disappointment in his tone, Mu Wanqing lowered her head and said in a small voice, Actually, this place is fine. What? Song Qing-shu didn't immediately react. Mu Wanqing's face grew redder. This is a study, but to make it easier to rest, I had people set up a soft couch. Song Qing-shu looked at the little bed at the side and finally reacted. Actually, his original intention had been to take Mu Wanqing back to the room to rest, but he hadn't expected her to think the wrong way. However, the two of them hadn't seen each other for a long time. As the saying went, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Furthermore, he had just been aroused by Jean Foreign. He didn't say anything else and carried her towards the soft couch. Mu Wanqing seemed to know what was coming. Her small hands tightly gripped his clothes, her face becoming even redder. Song Qing-shu had to admit that the feeling of being with a young woman who loved him deeply was not something those women who threw themselves at him outside could compare to. The young woman's eyes were as gentle as water as she looked at him affectionately, her mouth continuously calling out Song Lang, Song Lang. That kind of feeling where the spirit and body were one was unparalleled. After an unknown amount of time, just as the two of them were immersed in love, Song Qing-shu's expression suddenly changed. He pulled over the blanket to cover Mu Wan's glowing body. The door was pushed open with a bang, and a beautiful figure rushed in. Sister Mu, something happened. Li Qinglu's expression was very interesting. She had never expected to see such a scene when she pushed open the door. Mu Wanqing was so embarrassed that she hid under the blanket and didn't dare to show her head. What are you looking at? Close the door. Song Qing-shu coughed lightly to hide the awkwardness in his heart. What did you just say happened? Did you fight with the Mongolians? Chapter 2152. Are you sure it was Goryeo who took him away? Song Qing-shu hurriedly started to put on his clothes. Now that things had come to this, he naturally could not continue to enjoy the gentleness. I'm not sure. Li Qinglu shook her head. But if Nailan Rong said so, and Shueisher was stopped from flirting with Wu Yunzhu during the day, he is indeed the most suspicious. As she spoke, her gaze wandered back and forth between him and Mu Wanqing. She had the ghost of a smile on her face. Now that the Qing people are surrounding the Goryeo guest house, I was worried that something would happen, so I came back to inform you. I didn't expect to disturb you. I'm sorry. Although she said she was sorry, her tone was not apologetic at all. Song Qing-shu's nerves were already very thick, so he could naturally ignore it. However, Mu Wanqing's face was tender, and she was so embarrassed that she wanted to hide in a hole. Goryeo directly denied it, and it is not convenient for us to enter the house to search, so we are in a stalemate there. When it came to business, Li Qinglu put away her joking expression. I originally wanted to secretly send someone to take a look, but those two Goryeo women's martial arts are very high. I'm afraid it will be difficult to hide from them. I'll go take a look. Song Qing got up and had already put on his clothes. Not to mention that Manchu Qing was now his territory. Even if Wu Yunzhu called him Big Brother, he did not want to see anything happen to her. I'll take you there. After Li Qinglu said that, she turned around and looked at Mu Wanqing in the blanket. Sister Mu, do you mind if I take him away? Take him as far away as possible. Mu Wanqing's embarrassed and angry voice came from under the blanket. Then, Sister Mu, rest well, Li Qinglu said with a smile as she held Song Qingshu's arm and rushed out of the palace. It's not like you don't know that she's tender. Why are you deliberately making fun of her like this? Song Qingshu said impatiently on the way. Tender? Li Qinglu's expression was strange. Messing around with you in a place like the Imperial Study, she's very bold. She doesn't look tender at all. Song Qingshu said embarrassedly. It's all my fault. I wanted to be there. TSK, TSK, TSK. You're so protective of her. I'm going to be jealous if you keep speaking up for her. Li Qinglu snorted. Song Qingshu wisely decided not to argue with her and changed the topic. Oh yeah, how's the situation in Mongolia? Li Qinglu replied. The Mongols have been making noise for a while, but they did not really have any conflict with us. Moreover, Korea and the Manchurian Qing are in trouble. They're more than happy to watch a good show, hence they took the opportunity to get off the slope. That's good. I'll go to the Korean embassy to investigate first. You go and stabilize the two sides. Don't let them have conflict. As soon as Song Qingshu finished speaking, he disappeared. Hey, Li Qinglu couldn't hold him back and couldn't help but stomp her feet. Annoying brother Song. Song Qingshu ran as fast as lightning. Other than avoiding Li Qinglu's jealousy, he was also worried that Dark Cloud Pearl would be harmed if he was a little late. Although the two of them were not familiar with each other, he couldn't just watch a little girl fall into the hands of a wolf. With his Qinggong, it didn't take long for him to arrive outside the Western Xia embassy. The warriors of Western Xia were in a standoff with the people of the Qing kingdom. Yalu Nanxian was mediating, while the Mongolians and Dongying people were watching the show from the sidelines. Chindu Chinese network Song Qingshu quietly snuck in and found that the Fu sisters were talking about something in the courtyard. The two sisters stood together, and it could be said that they complimented each other, but the two beautiful faces were now filled with solemnity. Was it that bastard Shui Shi who kidnapped the girl? Fu Junyi's face was as cold as ice. She clearly understood the seriousness of the matter. I brought some people to search his room just now, but we didn't find the girl from the Qing kingdom. Fu Junyi shook her head. Could it be that the people of the Qing kingdom are slandering us? Fu Junyi frowned slightly. I don't think so. Looking at that person's anxious expression, he didn't seem to be faking it. It's most likely that the girl was really kidnapped. Maybe she was kidnapped by someone else, or someone deliberately wanted to frame us. Fu Junyi couldn't help but stomp her feet. It's all that bastard's fault. If we didn't flirt with her during the day, how could the Qing kingdom's first reaction be to suspect us? Song Qingshu, who was in the dark, was shocked. Dark Cloud Pearl isn't here? Since the girl from the Qing kingdom isn't here, why don't we let them in to take a look so that the people of the Qing kingdom will give up? Fu Junyi couldn't help but ask. Fu Junyi shook her head. Let's not talk about the fact that Shui Shi didn't allow it. Even if he agreed, we can't let other countries come in and search so easily. If we open the door, all the countries will think that our Goryeo is easy to bully. They can find any reason to make trouble for us. It's really humiliating for our country. It's that serious. Fu Junyi was shocked, and her small mouth opened in surprise. Song Qingshu saw that they couldn't get any useful information here, so he quietly searched the inner courtyard. Shui Shi's room wasn't difficult to find. Li Qinglu had told him about it on the way here. He came to a remote place and opened a corner of the window. He looked into the room and really didn't find the figure of Dark Cloud Pearl. He couldn't help but feel his heart sink. This was troublesome. Just as he didn't know where to look, he suddenly noticed that Shui Shi had chased all the maids and subordinates out of the room. His heart moved. He canceled the idea of leaving and continued to observe in the dark. He saw Shui Shi rubbing his hands and humming a tune. His walking posture was as proud as it could be and as wretched as it could be. He came to the side of a wardrobe and pushed the clothes aside. Then he bent over and pushed open a secret compartment. Heaven is really helping me. I didn't expect that there would be such a secret compartment in this house. Little beauty, even if your companions break in, they won't be able to find you. You should give up on this idea and accompany me to have fun. When the time comes, you will return to China with me. You will enjoy endless glory and wealth, Shueisha said as he walked out with a young girl in his arms. Song Qingshu fixed his eyes on the young girl. She was delicate and pretty. She had a special scholarly temperament. Who else could it be if it wasn't Dark Cloud Pearl? Fu Junyu must have come to investigate before because she didn't find her. These houses were the mansions of some princes and nobles who had fallen into rebellion. They were used to settle down the envoys of various countries. It was common for some princes and nobles to set up secret rooms in their houses to protect themselves. My father is the dignified Great Qing Empire's imperial bodyguard minister and the grand secretary of the Hall of Preserving Harmony. Do you think that I would care about the wealth of a small country like Korea? I advise you to let me go quickly. I can pretend that today's matter never happened. Otherwise, my father will mobilize the 8 Banners army and dismember your body into 10,000 pieces. Dark Cloud Pearl was really too quiet. Even if she was saying threatening words, they came out of her mouth in a soft voice like a kitten. It was really difficult to have a deterrent effect. Chapter 2153. Being the son of a concubine for a long time had caused him to be discriminated against in all aspects of his life. Even his family's inheritance was ranked behind his son-in-law. His extremely sensitive heart had been completely distorted. He was full of hatred for people of noble status. If the other party was a woman, then it made him extremely eager to conquer the other party. The Fu sisters were beautiful and had a high status. They had always been the target of his desire. Previously, he had taken the opportunity to hit on the 2 girls. In the end, he had been taught a harsh lesson. He understood that the sisters' martial arts were too high. In addition, his subordinates were afraid of Master Fu and did not dare to make a move on them. So, he could only change his target. Coincidentally, he met Wu Yunju. She was beautiful and quiet. At the same time, she was of noble status. She satisfied all his needs. Come on, you have lived for so long. You must have never experienced the joy of a woman, right? Shueisha felt his lower abdomen burning. Finally, he could not help but bend down and stretch his claws towards a girl on the bed. Song Qingshu, who was outside the window, shook his head. This Shueisha was exactly the same as the villains in TV dramas. His lines were too dirty and terrible. Wu Yunju finally panicked. Which girl did not yearn for love? In her heart, she had always imagined that one day she would offer herself to her lover. She did not know how many times she had imagined this beautiful scene. Who would have thought that in the end, she would be ruined by this disgusting man? At that moment, she felt that everything in front of her had turned gray. It was as if everything had lost its color. If you really do anything to me, my big brother will not let you go. Wu Yunju made a final effort. Your big brother? If that boy Nalan Rongrua has any skills, let him come find me. Shueisha did not take it seriously at all. It's not him. My big brother's martial arts are unparalleled. He is also a god of war. These years, his name has shaken the world. He is the most capable man in the world. The image of that person appeared in Wu Yunju's mind. Her almond-shaped eyes seemed to be filled with a brilliant light. TSK, how can there be such a person? Shueisha snorted disdainfully. His face quickly showed a trace of a lewd smile. Come, take a good look. Your big brother is actually also very big. In the next moment, his expression changed greatly. He hurriedly covered his crotch and rolled on the ground. His face was full of cold sweat. It was obvious that he was in extreme pain. Song Qingshu stood behind him and rubbed his feet against his clothes in disgust. You're disgusting. I don't even want to dirty my shoes when I kick you. Dark Cloud Pearl didn't expect this turn of events. She blinked her big eyes and looked at the masked man in front of her. Now is not the time to talk about this. Let me unseal your acupoints first. With a stroke of his hand, Song Qingshu cut off the rope that was tied to her body. At the same time, he unsealed her acupoints. This Chuashi was really careful. Not only did he seal her acupoints, he also tied her up. This knot doesn't look very proper. Who the hell are you? Chuashi gritted his teeth and looked at him. Song Qingshu picked up the dark cloud bead from the bed and was about to leave when he paused. You can call me the Egg Crusher. Chuashi was speechless. As soon as Song Qingshu walked out of the house, he was greeted by two snow-white sword lights, which blocked all his steps. Song Qingshu had to admit that this swordsmanship was somewhat magical. It was as if it could predict the enemy's next step. However, his current martial arts had long surpassed the ordinary concept. With a flash of his feet, he dodged the attack in an incredible rout. Fu Junyi and Fu Junyu were both stunned. The sword that the sisters made together could be said to be flawless. How did the other party jump out of the encirclement? The two of them were patrolling in the guest house. When they heard Chuashi scream, they quickly rushed over and happened to see a masked man coming out of the house with a young girl in his arms. He didn't look like a good person, so they tacitly made a move. They didn't expect that the other party could easily dodge their attacks. Seven asked. Hearing the commotion in the guest house, Song Qingshu didn't want to cause more trouble. He didn't fight with the two of them. He directly carried the dark cloud bead and disappeared into the darkness with a few leaps. Fu Junyi hurriedly said to her sister, You go and see how Chuashi is. I will go after him. After saying that, she used her qin gong and chased after him in the darkness. Her qin gong had always been brilliant. This time, she was as swift as a feather. Many of the Korean warriors cheered in unison. Fu Junyu hurriedly came to Chuashi's house. When she entered the door, she saw that his clothes were messy. She frowned and turned around. How are you? Don't worry about me. Go after that bastard. I want to tear him into pieces. Chuashi's face was incomparably ferocious. A man's pride made him unwilling to let Fu Junyu see him in such a miserable state. Fu Junyu snorted. She was originally too lazy to care about him. Moreover, she was more worried about her sister's safety. When she heard that, she also chased after him. Song Qingshu naturally noticed the tail behind him. He was also a little surprised at Fu Junyi's qin gong. She was actually able to follow him for so long. Of course, one reason was because he was carrying a person. The second reason was that he didn't want to reveal his strength. It should be known that many people knew of his current reputation. They also knew that his qin gong was unparalleled. If it was too obvious, it would be easy for people to guess. Therefore, he could only rely on the terrain to get rid of the other party. Big brother, is that you? The dark cloud bead in his arms raised her head and looked at the man in front of her. Her pair of beautiful eyes were full of stars. Song Qingshu was stunned. You can recognize me even when I'm wearing a mask? As if she had guessed what he was thinking, Dark Cloud Bead said with some excitement and nostalgia. When we first met, you also wore a mask to save me. At that time, I was also hugged by you like this. I remember this feeling in your aura. At this point, her small face was already flushed. Feeling the young girl's naivety and cuteness, Song Qingshu also smiled knowingly. He took off his mask. Can you help me keep this a secret? It's not convenient for others to know my current identity. Dark Cloud Bead nodded continuously. Her eyes seemed to be shining. I definitely won't reveal your identity. I won't tell anyone who asks. Feeling the determination in her voice, Song Qingshu couldn't help but smile. Even though it was a little irrational, he was still willing to believe that she wouldn't betray him. When you go back, remember to increase the security. Next time, you might not be so lucky. I can't just happen to save you every time. Song Qingshu said. Dark Cloud Bead smiled sweetly and looked at him foolishly. But every time I'm in danger, it's always so coincidental that it's Big Brother who saves me. Does this count as fate? Song Qingshu thought about it and also felt a little happy. It's indeed a coincidence. Dark Cloud Bead lightly bit her lips. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, as if she was having an intense mental struggle. With Song Qingshu's cultivation, he immediately noticed the abnormality in her body. He couldn't help but lower his head and ask, What's wrong? Are you hurt somewhere? The other party didn't say anything. What responded to him was a soft and sweet young girl's lips. Song Qingshu's eyes immediately widened. He never would have thought that things would actually unfold like this. Dark Cloud Bead had never been like a young miss of the Eight Banners. Instead, she was more like a young lady from a scholarly Han family. She was talented and beautiful. At the same time, she was quiet, shy, and delicate. Why would she suddenly make such a bold move? Even though his brain was a little off, his body instinctively made his hand move. Dark Cloud Bead's body trembled, but she didn't show any signs of opposition. Chapter 2154. Song Qingshu and Mu Wanqing had been stuck together like glue in the palace, but he had been interrupted midway. At this moment, he was suppressing an evil fire in his heart. The girl taking the initiative to kiss him was like a spark splashing into a barrel of oil, instantly igniting everything. With a tap of his toes, he took Wu Yunzhu and flew to the top of a nearby tree. The branches and leaves were dense here, so even if someone passed by, it would be difficult to discover the two of them above their heads. The girl's soft body and unique youthful aura were all intoxicating. Song Qingshu's actions also became more and more aggressive. Big brother, Wu Yunzhu was an inexperienced girl after all. She couldn't help but feel instinctively afraid when things came to this. However, when she thought that the other was the man she had yearned for day and night, it was hard for her to refuse. Song Qingshu was awakened by her call. He helped her tidy up her messy dress apologetically. "I'm sorry. I couldn't hold back my impulse just now." Wu Yunzhu's tender fingers pressed against his lips. "You don't have to say sorry. Actually, hearing you say that, I'm very, very happy." "Happy?" Song Qingshu couldn't help but be stunned. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Wu Yunzhu's face. "Because Big Brother had an impulse towards me." Song Qingshu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The thoughts of young girls nowadays were really hard to fathom. Actually, Wu Yunzhu blushed and lowered her head. She said softly, "Actually, you don't have to stop. I'm willing." Seeing her extremely shy look, Song Qingshu almost lost control of his emotions again after much difficulty. Song Qingshu knew that he had a hidden danger of inner demons. He didn't know when he would lose control and explode. How could he bear to ravage this girl who was as delicate as a flower? "This is too unfair to you. I don't want to ruin your lifelong happiness for a moment of pleasure," Song Qingshu said apologetically as he combed her messy hair. After all, Wu Yunzhu was a well-educated girl from a wealthy family. After the initial impulse, she gradually became rational. "Big brother, thank you. You're really a gentleman." Song Qingshu thought to himself, "Is this considered a different kind of good person card? Also, if your father finds out what I just did to you, I'm afraid he'll be so angry that he'll chop me with a knife. What kind of good person are you?" Wu Yunzhu suddenly became worried about personal gains and losses. "Big brother, do you think I'm a casual woman?" Seeing the young girl's tear-stained face, Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel a little flustered. "How could that be? I'm deeply moved, so how could I have such thoughts?" Feeling the sincerity in his tone, the Dark Cloud Bead's worry turned to joy. "Shoo, someone's catching up." Song Qingshu listened attentively. "Hey, that kid Nalan also brought people here. You go down first, you can go back with them." Wu Yunzhu opened her mouth and wanted to say that she did not want to part with him. However, she immediately remembered that the two of them had almost gotten into an accident just now. She was embarrassed and did not know how to face him, so she did not open her mouth to refuse. Song Qingshu gently supported her waist and gently sent her to the bottom of the tree. Just as she stood firm, a large group of people appeared in her line of sight. Chinquin Listening Network, Dark Cloud Bead. The person in the lead was Nalan Roan Ruaw. Seeing her appearance, he was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly ran over with his people. "Big brother Nalan." The two of them were childhood friends. Seeing him so anxious, Wu Yunzhu was also a little moved. "Are you alone? Where's the man in black who brought you out?" Fu Junyi looked around, but unfortunately, she did not see the figure of the mysterious man. "He left after saving me." Why? Do you still want to settle the score with him? Wu Yinzhu said angrily. One must know that she was almost humiliated by that disgusting Gaoli Gongzi. After all, he hurt someone. Our Gongzi's life or death is unknown. Fu Junyi said without confidence. She also knew that her side was in the wrong. Nalen Rong Ruo was reminded by the two people's words. He suddenly noticed that Wu Yunju's face was flushed. Her usually gentle and quiet eyes were now about to seep out water. Her lips were also a little red and swollen. He could not help but be shocked. Sister, did you get bullied by that surnamed Chui? Fu Junyi was also shocked. If they really sullied the innocence of the young lady, it would definitely cause a diplomatic dispute between the two countries. Although the Manchurian Qing was busy dealing with the chaos of the 3 border defenses, they would definitely send troops to punish them later. Wu Yinju's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly covered her face and shook her head to deny. No, I was just frightened and ran all the way, so my face is a little red. Oh, seeing that she was fine, Nalen Rong Ruo let out a sigh of relief. Fu Junyi was a little suspicious. She saw with her own eyes that the mysterious man brought her away. The mysterious man's Qin Gong was so high. Why did he need her to run? Naturally, it was impossible for him to be so tired that his face was red. However, her words were beneficial to Gaoli, so she did not choose to question it. Our great Qing dynasty will settle the score with your country sooner or later. At this time, Nalen Rong Ruo was also very sullen. This time, when they came to Xixia, the imperial court's intention was to let them go sightseeing. They did not really need him to fight for a consort. Therefore, they did not assign any masters to him, so he could not take revenge on the spot. He could only threaten them from afar. Song Qingshu saw his sullen expression from afar and secretly sighed in his heart. Nalen Rong Ruo did not know that the Manchurian Qing dynasty's upper echelons had been completely reshuffled. His father, Ming Zhu, and Song Gotu had been marginalized. Even if they wanted to send more top masters, they did not have the ability. As for Dongfang Muxue, she would not care about his life or death. Seeing that both sides had left, he also left quietly. Because he had been out for too long, he was worried that he would be discovered, so he directly returned to the southern Song residence. After tossing and turning for most of the night, he was also a little tired, so he directly fell asleep. The next day, at the first glimmer of dawn, he heard the noise outside. He could not help but get up and go out to investigate. He just happened to run into Xue Pan, who had just returned from outside. Xue Pan's face had dark circles, and he looked like he had overindulged in debauchery. Brother Xue, what's the matter that's so noisy? Song Qingshu asked. Xue Pan answered while yawning. It seems that the crown prince of Goryeo with the surname Chui died. The Goryeo people and the Manchurian Qing people are fighting fiercely, so they all ran over to watch the show. I don't know what's so interesting about it. I have to go back and catch up on my sleep. That Hu Ji yesterday was too exciting. She's indeed worthy of the Caucasian that those people talk about. Chui Pan is dead? Song Qingshu was startled. He really did not understand. Although he had kicked him hard yesterday, at most, his balls would suffer, and his life should not be in danger. Xue Pan walked past him. Suddenly, he wrinkled his nose and directly smelled his clothes. Hey, Bao Yu, you are really not a good friend. Last night, you clearly said that you were not feeling well, but in the end, you still sneaked out to seek pleasure. Song Qingshu frowned. What nonsense are you talking about? Chapter 2155. Song Qingshu's jaw almost dropped. Yesterday, he was with Mu Wanqing. Then he hugged Li Qinglu and rushed to the embassy of Korea. Finally, he stayed with Wu Yunzhu for a while. In total, there were 3 of them. He didn't expect Xue Pan's nose to be so sensitive. Are you born in the year of the dog? Song Qingshu looked at him with admiration. This is my talent. I'm very sensitive to women. You can't be jealous. Xue Pan wasn't angry. Instead, he was full of pride. Remember to bring me with you next time. The smell really makes one's imagination run wild. Before Song Qingshu could reply, Xue Pan yawned. I can't anymore. I've worked hard all night. I can't take it anymore. Song Qingshu couldn't be bothered with him. He walked outside and saw Shue Baochai and the yellow-shirted woman about to go to the embassy. He hurriedly followed them. Bao, where did you go last night? Shue Baochai suddenly asked. Song Qing-shu was startled, but he replied calmly, I'm resting in my room. The yellow-shirted woman snorted. Nonsense. When I went to your room last night, there was no one there. Song Qing-shu was stunned. Why did you go to my room in the middle of the night? A trace of embarrassment flashed across the yellow-shirted woman's face. She snorted and turned her head away, as if she couldn't be bothered to talk to him. Shue Baochai said gently, Bao, don't go out with my brother tonight. Xingqing Prefecture is a place where many powers gather. It's not very safe. The heir of Korea's Chui family died last night. I don't want you to repeat the same mistake. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. To men, the Song dynasty was truly a heavenly era. If it was in the past, it would be good if they didn't flip the roof off if they found out that their other half was loitering in a brothel. They wouldn't be as gentle as Shue Baochai. Furthermore, she wasn't advising him about the brothel, but worried about his life. In the Song dynasty, scholars invited each other to a brothel. It was as normal as having a meal in the future. Shue Baochai grew up in such an environment and didn't think it was a problem. Song Qing-shu didn't explain. Shue Pan had enough blame on him. He didn't care about one more. He cleared his throat and asked, Are you sure that heir is dead? Everyone in the diplomatic corps must know about this. Shue Baochai looked at him curiously. This morning, Prince Chui was found hanged in his room. Has the murderer been found? Qing-shu didn't believe it. Shue Baochai replied, The Xixiao people said that his death is related to the dark cloud pearl of the Qing kingdom. We don't know the specifics, so we're going to take a look now. Song Qing-shu frowned. Could it be that Wu Yunzhu was so angry that he wanted to kill Chui? As soon as this thought came out, it was immediately denied. Let alone the dark cloud bead. Even Nalen Romra didn't have such a high level of martial arts. Not long after, they finally arrived at the embassy of the Qing kingdom. A large group of people had already gathered there. The Goryos surrounded the door aggressively, while Nalen Rua guarded the dark cloud pearl behind her. Both sides were arguing about something. Song Qing-shu glanced around and discovered that other than them, envoys from other countries had also arrived. The Mongolian side was led by Fang Yiyu, who wore a faint smile on his face. It was obvious that he was happy to see the two countries clash. He did not hear Su Liuwu's voice. His face was probably injured, and it was not convenient for him to show his face. Rabbit flight on the side of the Jin kingdom. Wanyan Zhongjia took the lead. His expression was solemn, and it was clear that he did not want to see his brotherly country fall into such trouble. There was no sign of Galdan and the others nearby. They should have been frightened by the Mongolian surprise attack and were now guarding their gates to prevent others from taking advantage of them. Duan Yu from the Dali Kingdom was watching the show with his 4 bodyguards, but his expression was very listless. It was obvious that his mind was filled with the fairy sister, Miss Wang, and he was not interested in anything else. In contrast, Prince Zongzan of the Tubo Kingdom was much more active. He said to Jiumaji, State Preceptor, this girl from the Qing Kingdom looks pretty good. If you can't marry the Xixiao princess this time, you should go to the Qing Kingdom to propose marriage. Jiumaji nodded. She is the beloved daughter of the Grand Council's Songgo Tu. The benefits of marrying her are no less than that of the Xixiao princess. He had been a guest in the Manchurian imperial court for a period of time, so he was quite familiar with the structure of the Qing Kingdom. Unfortunately, his intelligence was a little behind, and Songgo Tu was no longer as powerful as before. Unexpectedly, Zongzan pointed at the Fu sisters. Those 2 Goryeo women are also beautiful, and they are sisters. TSK. I get excited just thinking about it. State Preceptor, your martial arts are unparalleled. Can you find an opportunity to catch them and warm my bed? Black lines appeared on Jiumaji's forehead. Those 2 sisters' martial arts are not weak. It's not easy to catch them. Moreover, they are representing the Goryeo kingdom this time. Zongpu will not allow this kind of provocation to other countries. I can't do this, and I can't do that. It's really boring to be a prince. Zongzan complained discontentedly. Jiumaji's face was livid, but he did not say anything. Although their voices were not loud, Song Qingshu heard them clearly with his martial arts. He could not help but secretly shake his head. With such an air, the Tubo kingdom was destined to not be peaceful in the future. At this time, Wu Yunju's clear and angry voice came. I've already said that when we left yesterday, he was still fine. Now that he is dead, how can you blame me? The Goryeo, General Jean Ruashian, said in a deep voice. We also know that this has nothing to do with Mississippi. However, the mysterious person who saved you last night caused extremely humiliating injuries to our young master, causing him to commit suicide out of shame. Miss, please tell us the identity of that person, and we will leave immediately. He knew that it was not wise to have a head-on conflict with the Qing kingdom, but he could not ignore Cui Shi's death. Not to mention the power of the Cui family in Goryeo. Even without this, it was now related to the national system of Goryeo. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, he directly took out Wu Yunju and turned his attention to the mysterious person. In his opinion, this way, both sides had a way out, which was the best of both worlds. Song Qingshu was also a little confused. Did Cui Shi really commit suicide because his testicles were broken? In fact, if he was treated in time, he might be able to use it after a few years of recuperation. Why'd he take it so hard? Unexpectedly, Wu Yunju bit her lip and refused directly. I won't tell you the identity of that person. Song Qingshu couldn't help sighing. This silly girl, couldn't she just say that she didn't know? Wouldn't that be admitting that she knew who the person who saved her was? Sure enough, when they heard her words, the faces of the Goryeo people changed. Jean Ruashian's face was gloomy. Miss, are you determined to cover up the murderer? Humph. Because of what happened yesterday, Wu Yunju did not have a good impression of this group of Goryeo people, so she directly turned her head and ignored them. The Goryeo people were in an uproar. Jean Renjun, a servant of the Cui family, said angrily, Our young master still raised his head when he died. Obviously, he was unwilling to die in peace. As a servant, I should fulfill his wish. Since you don't want to tell me, then I will fight with you. As soon as his voice fell, he rushed to Wu Yunju with his men. Nalan Rongrua drew out her sword and called her men to meet them. Chapter 2156. The noisy crowd suddenly quieted down because of this abrupt voice, and people started to look for the source of the voice. Shuev Baochai hurriedly pulled Song Qingshu's sleeve and said, Baoyu, don't talk nonsense. This has nothing to do with us. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. From the perspective of the Southern Song dynasty, they were happy to see the conflict between the Qing dynasty and Korea. How could they get involved at this sensitive time? However, it was not Jia Baoyu. No matter what, they had to get involved in this matter. When the Fu sisters heard that, their hearts skipped a beat and they looked back expectantly. But when they saw that it was Jia Baoyu from the Southern Song dynasty, they couldn't help but look disappointed. This time they came to the Central Plains in detail, and they naturally knew what kind of playboy Jia Baoyu was. Fu Junyi frowned and didn't say anything, but Fu Junyi didn't have such a good temper. Brat, what nonsense are you talking about? Hearing what she said, Shuep Baochai couldn't help frowning. This Korea was really a barbaric place, and all the women were so fierce. Song Qingshu walked out unhurriedly, looked at Jean Renjun, and said, Brother, didn't you just say that your young master died in an extremely miserable manner, as if he died with a remaining grievance? Jean Renjun wiped his tears and said, Our young master was killed by a villain and suffered extremely humiliating injuries. He committed suicide with hatred, so he naturally died with his eyes wide open. Song Qingshu secretly despised him and thought that if you want to cry, you should be more professional. After wiping his tears for a long time, he didn't see any tears at all. These are just your guesses. The fact is that your young master hung himself with his head facing back. What does this mean? Jean Renjun said disapprovingly. This is the most important point because if a person hangs himself to death because the huge weight of the body broke his neck, his whole head is looking down like this. Song Qing-shu explained while gesturing. There is only one possibility for the head to be facing up. That is, someone first strangled his neck from behind and then pretended to hang himself. As soon as he said this, the people of the various countries' envoys were in an uproar. The people of Korea even looked at each other, especially the Fu sisters, whose eyes were full of seriousness. That's just what you said. It's also possible that young Master Chui regretted hanging himself and kept struggling, which eventually led to his death. Among the Mongolians, Fang Yeyu suddenly spoke. His analysis was immediately echoed by many people. Many people from other countries also felt that it was too arbitrary to judge him based on this. You're all pampered princes, so it's normal that you don't know this kind of common sense. It's actually very simple to verify whether I'm lying or not. You can find some experience corner and ask him. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. Those crime-solving TV dramas from his previous life were quite useful. Thank you, young Justice Bao. Detective Conan, D. Rengia. Prince Zongzan of Tubo snorted. You speak as if you are not a young master of an aristocratic family. Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat. He had already noticed the suspicious gazes of Shue Baochai and the yellow-robed woman. He hurriedly explained, That's because I've met an expert in this field by chance and heard about similar cases from him. Oh, who is that person? The yellow-robed woman asked. I think his name is Song Si. Song Qing-shu answered with a little diffidence. Song Si was probably from this era, but he was not sure about his specific date of birth. Even if he was sure, he could not guarantee that such a person still existed in this world. The yellow-robed woman directly looked at Shue Baochai to seek her opinion. She was from the Imperial City Department, so she should have a record of all the famous people in the world. Shue Baochai nodded. There is indeed such a person. Song Si was the prison enforcer of Hunan at that time. He was a leading figure in this field. When he heard her say this, Song Qing-shu secretly sighed in relief. He did not expect that such a person really existed in this era. Shue Baochai cast him a profound glance from afar and called a subordinate. Send someone to Hunan to verify this matter with Song Si. See if he knows Jia Baoyu. Yes. The spy from the Imperial City Department left without batting an eyelid. He's right. The best coroner in Western Xia also made the same judgment. A clear voice rang out. Not far away, a group of warriors from Western Xia's first-class hall surrounded a beautiful girl as they walked over. Yilu Nanxian was tall to begin with. When she rode on a horse, her legs became even more slender and round. Her whole body was beautiful and full of heroic spirit. She suddenly became the focus of everyone present. Prince Zongzan's eyes lit up. This woman is not bad. Can the state preceptor bring her to me tonight? Zhou Maji's face darkened. She is the Western Xia's crown princess. Prince, don't mess around. On the other side, Fang Yeyu waved the fan in his hand, thinking that this woman was indeed an outstanding beauty. Even he was a little moved by her. Unfortunately, she was the woman that the prince had taken a fancy to. Sigh. On the Japanese side, Hideyoshi looked greedily at her alluring curves. He was talking to Jubiai Yagin next to him, although there are people in Japan who are not inferior to this woman in terms of appearance, but in terms of height, they are far inferior. In the Middle Earth, everything exudes temptation. Yilu Nanxian was already used to being the focus of the crowd. She naturally walked between the Koreans and the Qing people. Young Master Chui did not commit suicide because he was ashamed of his injuries. He was murdered. When the Dark Cloud Pearl left last night, young Master Chui was still alive. Obviously, someone sneaked in and killed him. Jin Renjun was still stubborn. It is also possible that the mysterious person who saved the Dark Cloud Pearl came back and killed him. If that person wanted to kill him, he should have killed him when he saved the Dark Cloud Pearl. Why did he have to go back and do something unnecessary? Yilu Nanxian obviously knew who that mysterious person was. She immediately retorted, You have been making excuses. Are you the real murderer? Seeing that General Jin and the Fu sisters were looking at him, Jin Renjun also panicked. Don't slander me. Yilu Nanxian ignored him and said directly, From now on, I will be in charge of the investigation of this case. Before we find the real murderer, no one is allowed to cause trouble. Jean Renjun still wanted to say something, but Jean Ruashian stopped him first. If that's the case, then we will have to trouble the crown princess. As the host, they could use the most manpower and resources. It was best for them to investigate the case. Yalu Nancian nodded, then suddenly pointed at Song Qing-shu and said, "From what this young master said just now, it is obvious that he is proficient in the art of litigation. Please join us and help us investigate the case. Is young master willing?" The Mongolian Fong Yiyu couldn't help but frown, thinking that this Jia Baoyu was a bit different from the rumors. Didn't they say that he was just a spoiled brat who spent his days surrounded by women? Fu Junyi and Fu Junyu, on the other hand, looked at Song Qing-shu suspiciously. They felt that this pretty boy in front of them was a little unreliable. Xue Baochai and the yellow-clothed girl exchanged a look, thinking that Jia Baoyu's luck with women was a bit too good these days. All the beauties he met along the way were looking at him in a different light. Chapter 21:57. Fong Yu said, "It's one thing for your Western Xia's Class 1 hall to investigate the case as a neutral third party, but you asked a Song person to investigate with you. Isn't that bad?" "That's right. Who knows if he's the murderer or not?" Prince Zongzan of Tubos said. Yelu Nancian said coldly, "This is Western Xia's territory. Naturally, we have the final say. As long as Goryeo has no objections, there's no need for anyone else to interrupt." She looked at Goryeo's people. Jean Ruashian and the Fu sisters gathered together and discussed in a low voice. Jean Renjun was only a retainer of the Chui family and had no right to enter the decision-making circle. "Ladies, what do you think? Great Song and Goryeo have always been on good terms. Logically, they have no motive to harm Chui, sure. I think there's no problem. I feel that there's a big conspiracy against Goryeo. It's good to investigate it. But according to our intelligence, that Jia Baoyu is only a playboy. Does he really have the ability to investigate it? I've heard of that Song CI. It seems that his record of redress has also spread to Goryeo. He is indeed an expert in this field." They discussed for a while, and Jean Ruashian said, "We have no objections. We trust the Crown Princess' judgment." Fong Yiyu, who was not far away, snorted coldly, stubborn. "Let's see what you can find." Then he flicked his sleeves and left. The people from other countries saw that there was nothing to see, so they also left. "Thank you, Crown Princess, for helping us out." Naylan Rongruo also thanked Yelu Nancian with the Dark Cloud Pearl. After exchanging greetings, they went straight back to their rooms and closed the door. They didn't talk to Goryeo anymore. Obviously, they had been disgusted by them for the past 2 days. Fu Junyi looked worried. Not only did they gain nothing from this trip to the Central Plains, but they also lost Shui Shi and offended their neighbor, the Manchurian Qing. How was she going to face her master and the court officials when she returned? Yelu Nancian looked at Song Qing-shu and asked, "What should we do next?" Hearing this, everyone was shocked. They had thought Yelu Nancian was just casually adding Jia Baoyu to the investigation team. Why did it sound like Jia Baoyu was the leader of the investigation team? Song Qing-shu's scalp went numb. "Even if you want to make me proud, this is not the time. It will easily arouse unnecessary suspicion." He hurriedly coughed to cover up the awkwardness in his heart. "Let's go take a look at the scene first." Yelu Nancian looked at the people from Goryeo and saw them nodding their heads in agreement. With a wave of her hand, she called for a group of people to hurry over to the galley guest house. The yellow-robed woman moved closer to Xue Baochai and gently touched her shoulder. She whispered, "Your childhood sweetheart hasn't been hiding her abilities all these years, has she?" Xue Baochai was also confused. "I don't know either. Let's go take a look." The yellow-robed woman grew curious. Okay. The doubts in Xue Baochai's heart grew stronger. A group of people quickly arrived at Choi Shi's room in the Korean embassy. Naturally, Choi Shi could not still be hanging on the beam. Now, he had been placed in a coffin and was waiting to be transported back to Korea. The starting point Fu Junyi explained from the side. "You said it was a homicide, but the problem is that we checked the room before. The door and windows were tightly shut, and there were no signs of external force opening the door. That's why we think young Master Choi committed suicide, because he couldn't bear the humiliation. Murder in a secret room? Song Ching-shu's heart skipped a beat. This kind of thing was common in movies and dramas, but it was the first time he saw it in this world. After all, there were all kinds of mysterious martial arts here. There was no need to do anything unnecessary. He could just kill the person and leave without anyone finding anything. However, noticing the suspicious gazes of the Goryeo people, Song Ching-shu decided to dispel their doubts first to avoid any more trouble later. It's not difficult to build a secret room. There are many martial arts in the martial arts world that allow for telekinesis, such as the dragon capturing skill, the crane controlling skill, and so on. After killing the person, build the scene, walk out of the room, and lock the door from the outside. Song Ching-shu was clear that with his martial arts, it would be a piece of cake to do this. The yellow-robed woman quietly asked Shue Baochai, how did he know so much about the martial arts of the martial arts world? Shue Baochai shook her head. Her eyes became more and more confused. Yellow Nanqian's eyes lit up. There is someone in the Xingqing prefecture who is an expert in the crane controlling skill, and that is the Tufan Imperial Advisor, Jiumaji. She originally knew that Xiao Feng was also an expert in the dragon capturing skill, but as they were both from Liao, she naturally didn't want to put any suspicion on him, not to mention that Xiao Feng didn't come this time. Fu Junyu immediately denied this speculation. Impossible. When the Dark Cloud Pearl was rescued, we immediately sent people to guard the house. Unless Jiumaji's martial arts had reached the level of a grandmaster, there was no way he could hide from the eyes of so many guards. Song Ching-shu fell in a deep thought. Jiumaji indeed had no motive, and he couldn't do it either. If he wanted to enter the house and kill Cui Shi under the watchful eyes of so many guards, he was afraid that only a great grandmaster could do it. Moreover, great grandmasters had their own specialties. Not all great grandmasters could do all this. But no one would think that it was a grandmaster who did it, because a mere Cui Shi didn't have the qualifications to trouble a grandmaster. There are actually other ways to do all this without relying on force. Song Ching-shu recalled the various methods he had seen in his previous life. For example, the door might not really be locked, and the first person to push the door deliberately pretended to be unable to open it. Impossible. Fu Junyu directly denied. At that time, my sister and I came to investigate together, and we pushed the door together, unless you think that the two of us colluded. Song Ching-shu glanced at them and smiled slightly. I'm only providing a possibility. I'm not suspecting you. There are many other possibilities. For example, these doors and windows were actually tampered with so that they look undamaged, but in reality, the nails and chisels inside have been sawed off, and the whole thing could be pushed down with force. Jin Ruoxian frowned and signaled his subordinates to immediately check. Song Ching-shu continued, or the murderer didn't leave the room at all, but hid behind the door, waiting for you to come in, then mixed into your group and left without anyone knowing. How is that possible? The murderer can mix into our group without being discovered. Does he think that we are all blind? Jin Renjun, the henchman of the Chui family, sneered. Song Ching-shu's expression became solemn. Then what if the murderer is someone from within your diplomatic mission? The clothes, appearance, and so on would not be out of place. And in addition, after you entered the door, you would definitely be shocked by Cui Shi's strange death, and your attention would be attracted, not paying attention to your own people behind the door. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the people of Goryeo changed, and Jin Ruoxian also said with an unfriendly expression, "You mean that the murderer is someone from within our diplomatic mission?" Song Ching-shu nodded. "I can't rule out this possibility." Next, they began to check the alibis of everyone in the guest house last night, and found that other than the guards who often moved in groups, there were only a few people without alibis. The Crown Prince of Goryeo, General Jin Ruoxian, henchman Jin Renjun, and the Fu sisters. The yellow-dressed woman whispered to Shue Baochai, "This guy doesn't seem to be such an idiot. He actually has some temperament when handling the case." Chapter 2158. Song Ching-shu's heart skipped a beat, but he still answered calmly, "Sister Bao, what's wrong with you?" You're not Baoyu. Shui Baochai stared into his eyes. Song Qingshu immediately understood that he had indeed shown too many abnormalities during this time. What he did today was like the straw that broke the camel's back, but he already had a countermeasure. He let out a long sigh and said, Sister Bao, people will eventually change. I have been a captive for so long, and now my family has suffered great changes. Do you think I can still be the same as before? Shui Baochai bit her thin lips and said, But you suddenly began to investigate the case. The change is too big. Song Qingshu looked gloomy and said, Sister Bao, do you think the imperial court will still allow the Jia family to participate in the official career after the great changes in our family? If we can be a talent who specializes in investigating cases like Song Ci, the imperial court will not be worried, and we can protect ourselves. Shui Baochai could not help but gently hold his hand and said, Baoyu, no matter what happens to your family, I will not change. Song Qingshu could not help but sigh when he saw the blush on the young girl's cheeks. He could even faintly see the fine hairs on her cheeks. The shyness and worry between her brows made him think that a young girl's youthful aura was something that women rarely had. But, unexpectedly, Shui Baochai suddenly grasped his wrist and stared into his eyes. I have already sent someone to Song Ci to verify your relationship. If I find out that you are lying to me, I will not spare you. A second ago, she was still a bashful young lady, and the next second, she became a secret agent of the Imperial City Department full of dark aura. Song Qingshu was stunned. Why would I lie to you? Just go and investigate. Song Qingshu looked relaxed, but he secretly complained. It seemed that he could not hide it for long. Sensing that there was no change in his pulse, Shui Baochai was relieved. She hurriedly let go of his hand and said bashfully, Baoyu, don't blame me for being cautious. I think you don't want someone to pretend to be you and take advantage of me. Of course, Song Qingshu felt a headache coming on. He thought that a woman's sixth sense was too terrifying. It was hard to hide it from a woman, and even harder to hide it from a woman who already had a lover. Ahem, what are you two doing? The yellow-robed woman walked over and looked at the two suspiciously. Shui Baochai blushed and hurriedly distanced herself from Song Qingshu. Nothing. The yellow-robed woman looked at her as if she was deceiving herself and said, I'm going back to the hostel. What about you? Although the son of a powerful minister died here, in her opinion, it was just a person from a small country at the border who died. The suspects were the Qing kingdom or the Koreans, so naturally, she was not interested in these details. Wait, I'll go with you. Shui Baochai hurriedly chased after him. At the same time, she was a little annoyed at herself for being so impulsive and saying those things to him. I hope you won't disappoint me. Shui Baochai looked back at him, and her eyes became a little deep. Following that, Song Qingshu and Yelu Nanxian continued to question the Goryeo people, but they still didn't get any results. Helpless, they could only leave for the time being. On the way, Yelu Nanxian asked, Do you have any leads? Song Qingshu shook his head. Everyone is a suspect, but there's no concrete evidence. Why don't we just ignore it? We've already cleared the suspicion of the Qing kingdom. The rest is Goryeo's own business. Goryeo is just a small border country. They won't be able to cause any trouble. Yelu Nanxian suggested. Xian, after staying here for a while, you've also become two-faced. Song Qingshu couldn't help but tease her. Then, with a serious expression, he said, It's not that we can't do this, but I keep feeling that there's a big conspiracy behind this. If we don't solve it soon, I'm afraid we'll be in danger in the end. With your level of cultivation, if you have this feeling, then it's possible. Then we really can't just ignore it. As a martial artist, Yelu Nanxian understood this feeling very well. But what should we do next? Song Qingshu stopped walking. Just now, they were gathered together. We couldn't get any leads, even if we wanted to. When they split up, we'll take them down one by one. Then who should we start with? Yelu Nanxian asked curiously. The Fu sisters. Song Qingshu answered. Are you sure it's not because they're pretty? Yelu Nanxian looked at him suspiciously. Song Qingshu was speechless. Looks like his reputation had been made. it would be hard to clear it in a short time. It's just because they're the least likely culprits. Is that so? Yalu Nancian had a faint smile on her face, purposely dragging her words. Song Qingshu's face heated up. Under her teasing gaze, he quickly ran away. When he was near the Goryeo embassy, he saw the beautiful figure of a woman in white standing by the river, looking into the distance. If it wasn't Fu Junyi, who could it be? She doesn't have single eyelids. Is she really from Goryeo? Song Qingshu couldn't help but complain as he recalled the Korean dramas he watched in his past life. Who? Fu Junyi suddenly turned around. Her beautiful eyes were as sharp as a sword that was about to be unsheathed. It's me. Song Qingshu shrugged, indicating that he didn't mean any harm. Fu Junyi looked away and continued to stare into the distance. Miss, what are you thinking about? Looking at the side of her face, it was as if a brush had been drawn in one go. She was indeed a rare beauty. Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel a little better. But the reply he got was two cold words. It's none of your business. Ice beauty? Song Qingshu wasn't surprised. After standing with her for a while, he asked, Who do you think the murderer of young Master Chui is? You're in charge of the investigation. This is your business. Fu Junyi didn't even bat an eyelid. Song Qingshu knew that she was guarding against him. He probably wouldn't be able to get anything out of her, so he didn't insist. Miss, continue watching. I'll go ask the others. This time, it was Fu Junyi's turn to be surprised. She thought that her attitude would make this spoiled brat angry. Who would have thought that he wouldn't feel humiliated at all? Of course, she was only a little surprised, but she didn't take it to heart. Song Qingshu's ears twitched slightly. Suddenly, he heard the indistinct sound of swordplay in the air. Following the sound, he walked for about 100 feet and just happened to see a young girl in white practicing her swordplay in the bamboo forest. The fluttering bamboo leaves in the air seemed to have become the best decoration for the young girl in midair, making her figure look even more alluring. Miss, good swordsmanship. Song Qingshu could not help but clap his hands. Even with his attainments in swordsmanship, he had to admit that this was a rather exquisite set of swordsmanship. However, his gaze still subconsciously fell on the girl's waist. Just now, when she turned and twisted a few times in midair, the flexibility of her waist was really too good. Chapter 21:59. Song Qingshu blinked and replied seriously, Believe it or not, you have to be able to put it back after digging it up. I can not only put my eyes back, I can even save you after killing you. Do you want to try? The corner of the girl's lips curled up slightly, showing that she was trying hard to hold back her laughter. There's no need to try. There's no need to try. Song Qingshu said as he pinched the tip of her sword with his fingers and moved it to the side. The girl clearly had no intention of really hurting him and casually sheathed her sword. What? You suffered at sister's place, and now you're here to make fun of me. You saw it. Song Qingshu was startled. The young girl was naturally Gao Li's Fu Junyi. Objectively speaking, her face was more beautiful than her sister Fu Junyi's, but Fu Junyi had a unique, cold, and noble temperament. Overall, the two of them could be considered as plum blossoms, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum. Fu Junyi snorted. I saw you sneakily coming from sister's place from afar. Song Qingshu was really depressed. Was his current temperament really that bad? It must be because Jia Baoyu looked too feminine, giving people this kind of feeling. Yes, that must be it. You don't have to waste your time. I have nothing to say here. Fu Junyi turned around and left, her silhouette delicate and charming. Hearing that her tone was not as unapproachable as Fu Junyi's, Song Qingshu hurriedly chased after her. Don't go, big sister. Do a good deed and help me. As long as you can help me, I'm willing to do anything. The mysterious murder of Chui, sure, made him feel that there was some conspiracy behind it. If he did not find a murderer soon, he felt that it would be disadvantageous to him, so he could not care so much. As for this flattering look and the loss of moral integrity, it all belonged to Jia Baoyu anyway. What did it have to do with him? Big sister? Fu Junyi's jade-like face turned slightly red. You're really shameless. You are obviously older than me. Song Qingshu replied with a smile. As the saying goes, those who reach first come first. Miss, your swordsmanship is so good. It is only right for me to address you respectfully. Fu Junyu snorted, but it was obvious that she enjoyed this new form of address. Are you really willing to do anything? Of course. Song Qingshu patted his chest and promised. But in his heart, he thought to himself, anyway, it won't be long before you guys go back to Korea. At that time, you guys can just deny it, and it will be Jia Baoyu who loses face. All right, I want that. Fu Junyu's slender finger pointed towards the sky. It had been drizzling a while ago, and now that the sun had risen, a rainbow was faintly discernible in the sky. Song Qingshu looked troubled. Little Missy, aren't you making things difficult for me on purpose? Why don't we change it to something else? Whatever you say, it's fine if you can't do it. Fu Junyu's eyes were filled with mischief. This smelly brat with oily hair and powdered face. If she didn't teach him a lesson, he wouldn't know how powerful this lady was. Will you really help me if I give you the rainbow? Song Qingshu's face was conflicted, but his heart was bursting with joy. Why didn't these women have any sense of innovation? They just happened to bump into his door. One had to know that he always carried a few prism mirrors with him. Usually, he would combine them into a convex lens to start a fire. Occasionally, he could take them out alone to trick young girls. Cool. Of course, I'll tell you everything I know. Fu Junyu didn't think that the other party could really take the rainbow. Then give me your hand. Song Qingshu took out a prism mirror from his bosom. What are you doing? Hearing his words, Fu Junyu couldn't help but look vigilant. If you don't give me your hand, how can I give you the rainbow? Song Qingshu directly grabbed her wrist and pulled it over. Then, he aimed the prism mirror at the sun and adjusted its angle. Her hand being held by a man, Fu Junyu was about to get angry, but suddenly her body trembled. Looking at the beautiful rainbow in her hand, her eyes couldn't help but widen. Don't move. Seeing that she subconsciously clenched her fist to grab the rainbow, Song Qingshu hurriedly smoothed her palm again. If he touched her like this on a normal day, Fu Junyu would have already pierced a hole in him with her sword. But at this moment, her attention was completely attracted by the rainbow in her hand. Her whole person was shocked and didn't notice anything at all. Looking at her cute, surprised look, Song Qingshu secretly sighed. This doesn't seem to be the first time I used this method. Who was the last girl? He couldn't help but think of the story of a male star in his previous life who used the same heart-shaped stone to deceive several women. For a moment, his expression was a little strange, but he quickly comforted himself. No matter what, he had to be more skillful. How did you do it? Fu Junyu looked at him with surprise and surprise. At this moment, the image of Song Qingshu in her eyes was very different. Before, he was just a greasy-haired playboy. Now, his whole body seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mysterious halo and seemed to be much more pleasing to the eye. Song Qingshu stuffed the prism mirror into her hand. Why do you care how I did it? Now that the rainbow has been given to you, it's time for you to fulfill your promise. To explain spectrum to people of this era that different frequencies of light have different refractive indices to the same medium, he didn't have that much free time. Fu Junyu happily held the prism mirror in her hand and lightly bit her lips. A trace of shyness flashed across her face, but she immediately recovered. Okay, what do you want to know? Who do you think has the most motive in your mission? Song Qingshu didn't know the internal situation of Korea, so he needed to personally inquire. Don't you suspect that my sister and I are the murderers? Fu Junyu looked at him curiously. Song Qingshu said with a smile, the two of you are so beautiful and noble. How could you do such a dirty thing? Although he said that, his heart was cold. In those detective movies, the person who was the least likely to look like the murderer was the murderer. He couldn't make this mistake. Although I know that you are flattering me, I am quite happy to hear it. Fu Junyu was no longer as distant as before, and her expression was much softer. The one with the most motive is General Jean Ruoxian. Our Korea is now in the hands of the powerful minister Choi-yu. Now that Choi-yu is old, the issue of the successor of the Choi family is on the agenda. However, Choi-yu has no legitimate son. Jean Ruoxian is his legitimate son-in-law, and he is very capable, so Chui Yu has the intention to cultivate him as the successor. But Chui Yu still has a few illegitimate sons, such as Chui Shi. Of course, they're not willing to see this happen, and they all see Jean Ruoxian as a thorn in their side. Fu Jinyu hesitated and added, "Some time ago, I inadvertently heard that Chui Shi and his subordinates discussed to get rid of Jean Ruoxian. It is very likely that Jean Ruoxian knew all this and took the initiative to gain the upper hand." Song Qingshu secretly clicked his tongue. It seemed that where there were people, there was no lack of struggle for power and interests. Since you found out that Chui Shi was going to harm Jean Ruoxian, didn't you stop it? Chapter 2160. Song Qingshu didn't expect her to be so direct. After a while, he asked, "Which side are you and your sister on?" "Of course we are on the same side as Master." Fu Junyu showed respect when she mentioned Master. Master has a high position in Korea and maintains the balance between the Chui family and the royal family. Balance? Song Qingshu's expression was strange. "From your tone, it's obvious that you are helping the royal family to suppress the Chui family." Fu Junyu blushed and snorted. "Now that the Chui family is in trouble, of course, I have to help the royal family. If the royal family becomes powerful and acts recklessly in the future, Master will definitely take care of it. Your master must be very good at martial arts. If he didn't have absolute martial arts, the Chui family, who had the power, wouldn't care about his words. However, such a person was destined to be in trouble with both the Chui family and the royal family. He probably wouldn't have a good end in the future. Of course, my master is the most powerful person in the world." Fu Junyu's tone was full of pride and matter of fact. "Really?" Song Qingshu chuckled and didn't refute. At this time, a cold voice suddenly came from not far away. "Junyu, what are you doing over there?" Fu Junyu stuck out her tongue and said, "My sister is calling me. I can't talk to you anymore. I'll leave first." After that, she didn't wait for the other party to answer and skipped away, playing with something in her hand as she walked. "What's this?" Fu Junyu glared at Song Qingshu from afar, and then noticed the prism in her sister's hand. "No, nothing. It's just a small thing." Fu Junyu quickly put the prism in her arms. Obviously, she didn't want to share this secret with her sister. Fu Junyu frowned and didn't continue to ask, "In the future, stay away from that Jia. I heard that his family is involved in the rebellion and is not liked by the Song court. Now that Korea is in troubled times, don't make trouble for us." "His family has suffered such a misfortune?" Fu Junyu was a little surprised and looked back at the man. She really couldn't figure out how he still maintained an optimistic and cheerful smile. Although the sisters' voices were soft, with Song Qingshu's martial arts, he could hear them clearly. He thought that as the elder sister, Fu Junyu must be more sensible and put Goryo's interests first. His younger sister was more carefree and did things according to her whims. "I should ask Jean Ruoxian." Thinking of the information provided by Fu Junyu, Song Qingshu walked toward Jean Ruoxian's residence. Knowing the purpose of his visit, Kim Ruoxian was very tight-lipped. "Although we Koreans have a lot of internal strife, we are very united against outsiders. This time, we came to the Central Plains to shoulder a heavy responsibility. I really don't believe that anyone would disregard the overall situation and kill Chui Shi. As far as I know, there seems to be a fundamental conflict of interest between you and Chui Shi, right?" Song Qingshu asked as he stared into his eyes. Jean Ruoxian's expression did not change at all. As he boiled the tea, he sighed with emotion. "The tea of the Central Plains is indeed more fragrant than that of our place." Song Qingshu was not in a hurry. He knew that Song Qingshu had more to say. Think twice sure enough, Jean Ruoxian poured him a cup of tea and continued, "You must be referring to the inheritance of the Chui family." Song Qingshu nodded slightly. "I have indeed heard some rumors about this." Jean Ruoxian said lightly, "That's just the wishful thinking of others. Of course, maybe Chui Shi does see me as a thorn in his side, but I have never regarded him as an enemy." "Why?" Song Qingshu asked curiously. Judging from Jean Ruoxian's demeanor, He did not seem to be lying. You are from the Song dynasty, so you don't understand the situation of our Goryeo imperial court. Now the Chui family seems to be in power, but according to the words of you people from the Central Plains, there are countless dangers lurking in the dark. I think Mr. Jia knows this best. Jean Ruoxian gave him a meaningful look. Song Qing-shu was stunned and immediately reacted. Indeed, our Jia family used to be somewhat similar to your Chui family, but unfortunately, these are all fleeting clouds. If not, I would not say so much to you, Mr. Jia. Jean Ruoxian sighed. People only know that the military and political power come from the Chui family, but they don't realize how many people are lurking in the dark, waiting for the Chui family to make mistakes and then killing them with one blow. If father-in-law is in the prime of his life, these are naturally not enough. But now he is old and frail, and everyone knows that he will not live for many years. So, all the forces have started to think. Jean Ruoxian seemed to think of some families, and his tone was a little playful. After a while, he continued, Father-in-law is a sensible man. In this case, only a person with real ability and prestige can continue to stabilize the glory of the Chui family. If the Chui family is handed over to Chui Shi, who only knows how to bully men and take women, in less than 3 years, all the forces will inevitably attack together, and the Chui family will be doomed. Compared with the glory and safety of the whole family, what is the faint father-son relationship with the son of a concubine? What does Mr. Jia think? Jean Ruoxian took a sip of tea and looked quietly at Song Qing-shu. Song Qing-shu nodded and understood what he meant. Just like Sun Tzu during the Three Kingdoms period, he did not pass the throne to his younger son, but to his younger brother, and Huanwen did not choose a son before he died, but passed the throne to his younger brother, who was more capable. In the end, it was to protect the whole family. I understand what General means. In this case, as long as General does not do anything, the inheritance of the Chui family will naturally be yours. On the contrary, if you really kill Chui Shi and Chui Yu finds out, you will lose the inheritance. Jean Ruoxian looked at him with some surprise. Mr. Jia's performance surprised me. It is not the same as the rumors. It seems that the rumors are indeed not trustworthy. For the sake that Mr. Jia is my bosom friend, I will give Mr. Jia a piece of news. Jean Ruoxian looked out of the window, as if immersed in memories. On the way to the Central Plains, Chui Shi lusted after the Fu sisters. He actually drugged them and wanted to get intimate with them. As a result, he was found out by the sisters and was severely beaten by them. If we had not appeared in time, I am afraid that his life would be in danger. At that time, Fu Junyu said that she would kill him sooner or later. Song Qing-shu was suddenly dumbfounded. What the hell? After going around in a circle, he came back to the original point? Fu Junyu thought that Jean Ruoxian was the murderer, and Jean Ruoxian also implied that the sisters had the most motive? The circle of nobles was really messy. After bidding farewell to Jean Ruoxian, Song Qing-shu did not expect that this would be the last time they would see each other. When he came to the Goryeo embassy the next day, he suddenly heard a scream. This scream was so shrill that it alarmed everyone in the embassy. At this time, Song Qing-shu was wearing Jia Baoyu's face and did not dare to show his qinggong. He could only quickly run in the direction of the sound. Looking from afar, he saw the Fu sisters and a group of people surrounding Jean Ruoxian's room. The one in front was Jean Rinjun, who was hurriedly knocking on the door. General, what happened? Chapter 2161. Looking at the horrible corpse on the beam, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but complain in his heart. What the F***CK? I ran into a serial murder case. Thinking of what Jean Ruoxian had said to him before, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but look at the Fu sisters. Were they really the murderer? But the sisters were frowning now, and there was no flaw in their expressions. The people of Korea hurriedly wanted to put Jean Ruoxian down, but they were stopped by Song Qing-shu. Everyone, don't destroy the scene, let me do it. Although there were no trace experts in this world to examine, he didn't want to see a mess of footprints at the murder scene. Jean Rinjun said angrily, Aren't you investigating the case? You haven't found a murderer for a long time, but someone died. What kind of case are you investigating? Song Qingshu frowned slightly. The truth was in front of him, and he really couldn't refute it. He didn't expect Fu Junyi to help him. This can't be blamed on him. The more murders there are, the more likely the murderer is to make a mistake, and we are one step closer to the murderer. Jin Rinjun snorted coldly. If the murderer continues, what's the use of him finding out when all of us are dead? Fu Junyi was unhappy. Why do you have to find a reason to refute everything I say? Are you the murderer deliberately making it difficult for him to investigate the case? Jin Rinjuan's face changed. Second Miss Fu. Some things can't be said casually. Song Qingshu was surprised. Second Miss Fu, judging from her tone, she should have a younger sister? The Fu sisters' genes were really good. That Master Fu chose 3 such beautiful disciples. Could he be a pervert? All right, Junyu. Jin Rinjun is also worried about everyone's safety. Fu Junyi came out to smooth things over. If she knew that Song Qingshu was criticizing her master at this time, she might have gone berserk on the spot. Mr. Jia, please put down General Jin's body. Song Qingshu nodded and found a stool. While putting down Kim Ruoxian's body, he carefully observed the surroundings. There was no trace of fighting, so it should be an instant death. As a great general of Korea, Kim Ruoxian's martial arts were also passable, but he was killed before he could resist at all. Was the murderer's martial arts really that high? At this time, Fu Junyi watched him easily put Jin Ruoxian down, and her eyes couldn't help but be a little suspicious. This playboy is so strong. After removing the body, Song Qingshu started to inspect the room again. Last time, the secret room was inspected by a group of Korean soldiers. Now, he felt that all of them looked like murderers, and he could not trust them. It would be safer to inspect it himself. After a round of inspection, he found that all the doors and windows in the room were in good condition, and there were no traps or anything of the sort. He even spread out his chi to check the surroundings of the house to make sure that there were no secret rooms or secret passages that could hide people. The only thing that was damaged was the door bolt. It was broken in the middle. It was probably caused by Jin Rinjun rushing over and knocking into it. While he was inspecting the room, Yalu Nancian had already rushed over with the people of Class 1 Hall. Song Qingshu had just gone over to talk to her about the situation here when the Crown Prince of Korea also came over. Ever since he came to Western Xia, the Crown Prince of Korea usually lived in seclusion and rarely showed himself. His skin was much paler than normal people, and his whole temperament was a little weak, lacking a bit of masculinity. But at this time, he was angry and began to criticize Yelu Nancian and the others. What is wrong with you people of Western Xia? Our people are dying here one after another, but you can't find anything? Yelu Nancian frowned slightly and replied coldly. Crown Prince, we respect you as a guest, and many of your people have died recently. It's inevitable that we are in a bad mood, so we won't argue with you. No one wants this to happen, but if Crown Prince insists on being so aggressive, it will affect the diplomatic relations between our two countries. Goryeo used to be a vassal state of the Liao Kingdom. Even the current Xixia Kingdom was far stronger than Goryeo in terms of national strength. Since when did Goryeo have the right to interfere in their own territory? Song Qingshu secretly gave her a thumbs up. This was the bearing of a celestial state. He thought back to the young Justice Bao that he had watched before. The group of Koreans were so arrogant that they were completely unreasonable. They would threaten the great Song Empire at the drop of a hat, and they would bring their cavalry to trample on the Song Empire's territory. The officials of the Song Empire were all submissive and flattering. What a joke. Since when did a small country like Korea have that kind of ability? Hearing her tough attitude, the Crown Prince of Korea was momentarily stunned and didn't know what to say for a long time. Fortunately, at this time, people from other countries heard the news and came to watch the show, dissolving his embarrassment. TSK, people are dying one after another. The standards of your Western Xia guards are really unreliable. Prince Zongzan of Tubo said as he watched the show. Yes, we're all doubting our own safety. Who knows when it will be our turn? Dongying's Fuchai Hidekitsa said with a gloomy face. That's right. His words resonated with the other forces, and they all chimed in. Yalu Nancian said coldly, "After you checked into the embassy, the first thing you did was to drive the people arranged by our Western Xia to the periphery. You only believe in the protection of your own people, and now you are accusing us of not protecting you well enough." Everyone was speechless. They knew that what she said was the truth. Prince Songzan was still the best at pestering people. Then why did nothing happen to us before, but only after we came to Western Xia? This can only mean that the security here in Western Xia is not good. Yes, yes, yes. The group of people seemed to have found a new target and started to criticize Western Xia again. Yalu Nancian was furious, but she only had one mouth. How could she win against so many people? Don't argue with an idiot. Song Qingshu comforted her through the secret voice-sending technique. The evil fire in her heart was burning, but when she heard her lover's words, she couldn't help but laugh, and all the fire was gone. Yalu Nancian was born with a face as beautiful as a painting. On top of that, she was tall and slender, exuding a noble and outstanding temperament. Her smile was like the first melting of ice and snow, the blossoming of 100 flowers, stunning all the men around her. How could they still remember to pick a fight with the Western Xia? Feeling everyone's burning gaze, Yalu Nancian blushed. She knew she had lost her composure just now, and quickly put away her smile. "Everyone, don't worry. We will find the murderer as soon as possible and give you an explanation." The Mongolian people who had been silent all this time finally spoke. Obviously, the wound on Su Liuwu's face hadn't healed yet. He still sent Feng Yiyu out. "It's not that we don't trust the crown princess, but according to our investigation, this young Master Jia is only a playboy in Lin and a playboy who mingles with women. Does he really have the ability to investigate?" Song Qingshu furrowed his brows. "This gigolo is actually trying to bring trouble to me." Yalu Nancian was also secretly worried. She couldn't say too much on his behalf in front of so many people. Fu Junyu suddenly said, "I believe he has the ability to find out." As soon as she said this, everyone looked at her. Even Fu Junyi looked at her sister in surprise. She had always hated playboys. Why did she come out to support them this time? Yalu Nancian rolled her eyes at Song Qingshu and said through the secret voice-sending technique, "I didn't expect you to hook up with another girl so soon." Song Qingshu could only smile bitterly. It seemed like he would have to carry a few prism mirrors with him in the future. Chapter 2162. Yes, yes, we're here to marry the princess, not to watch you investigate a case. Prince Zongzan also started to make a fuss. Jiumaji couldn't stop him in time. He thought that the other tantric sects were trying to invade Tibet through Mongolia, so the relationship between Tibet and Mongolia was very tense. However, the prince was like a yes man to the Mongolians, which was really a headache. That's right, only a few unimportant people died in Goryeo. Is it right to make so many of us wait? Yusai Hidekitsa said coldly with both hands holding his sword. It doesn't matter. Fu Junyi furrowed her brows. Maybe they're big shots in Goryeo, but for countries like ours, they're nothing. At least your crown prince is still alive. Yusai Hidekitsa obviously didn't take Goryeo seriously. Bastard. Fu Junyi wasn't as patient as her senior sister. She was furious and unsheathed her sword. Her figure flashed, and in the next second, she was already 3 feet away from him. At this time, the samurai next to Yusai Hidekitsa took a step forward. The people around only saw a blur, and in the next moment, Fu Junyu had already retreated several feet. Her expression was very ugly because her hand was empty and her sword had been taken away. The Japanese samurai was the Yagyu Jubiai whom they had met at the inn before. His fingers gently stroked the long sword in his hand, and he said with a cold smile, "The legendary bright sword technique is nothing more than this." Song Qingshu secretly sighed. He had seen Fu Junyu's sword dance before and knew that with her sword technique, she wouldn't be defeated in one move. In the end, it was still because she was too young and impatient. The bright sword technique was about planning before acting and anticipating the enemy's moves first. Fu Junyu had been provoked by the other party's words and attacked blindly, allowing the other party to take advantage of her weakness. Of course, the Japanese's ability to catch the blade with his bare hands was quite good. Fu Junyu wanted to rush over again, but she was stopped by her sister. "You're not in a good state of mind right now." Fu Junyu frowned, but she knew that she was right. Fu Junyu looked at Yagyu Jubiai and said, "I heard that the serene school has 3 great techniques: killing blade, sword of the living, and bladeless take. Today I've seen bladeless take, and it's indeed extraordinary." Yagyu Jubiai laughed. "You still have some eyes." Before he could finish his words, he saw a white shadow flash in front of him. He hurriedly retreated and looked down at the clothes that had been cut a few inches on his chest. His expression was extremely ugly. Fu Junyu returned to his original position and returned the saber back to Fu Junyu. The martial arts of the New Yin style are only a so-so. Song Qingshu nodded secretly. In fact, just like how Fu Junyu didn't seem to be so different from Yagyu Jubiai, Fu Junyu's martial arts weren't obviously better. It was all because of the right tactics and the perfect timing that they had achieved this unexpected disparity. Being given a taste of his own medicine, Yagyu Jubiai's face turned red. He pressed his hand on the hilt of his sword and was ready to rush out to avenge his shame. At this time, Yalu Nancian came forward to stop both sides. "That's enough. Everyone, there's no need to hurt the harmony because of this. The marriage selection will be officially held in 3 days, and the list of matches will be announced in the next 2 days. Everyone, please calm down." They had discussed this matter with Song Qingshu before. With so many people from different countries gathered in Shixia, it was like a barrel of gunpowder that could explode at any time. They had to solve this matter as soon as possible. "That's for the best." Hearing this answer, Fang Yu nodded with satisfaction. He was no longer interested in the rest of the matter and directly left with a group of Mongolian warriors. Prince Ongzan also left with a smile. "My princess wife, I'm coming to marry you right away." Hearing this, the others were speechless and secretly scolded him for being a fool. The group of Dong Ing people looked at the Koreans with unfriendly eyes, but Yalu Nancian stood between the two sides. It was impossible for them to take the risk of offending the Xixia people and attack the Koreans, so they could only snort coldly and say, "You Koreans only know how to rely on others to protect you. You could protect me for a while, but how can you protect me forever?" After saying that, the group of Dong Ing people left resentfully. The Koreans all looked angry, but after so many important people died one after another, they didn't have the energy to argue with the Japanese. Chinese Network 3 Yalu Nancian began to comfort the Koreans about Jean Ruoxian's death, and the people from Class 1 Hall and the corner they brought also began to work, asking everyone's testimony and examining the corpses. Song Qingshu went to Fu Junyu's room and found the girl sitting on a stool, sulking and pouting. Before he could say anything, she said, "Don't bother me. I'm not in a good mood today." Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. "You were just careless, and your weapon was snatched away. It's not a big deal. You've touched my sore spot. Do you believe I won't beat you up?" Fu Junyu instantly exploded, disappeared from the stool, and grabbed Song Qingshu's collar, pressing him against the wall. Feeling the softness on his chest, Song Qingshu had a strange expression on his face. This girl was really angry. She didn't care about the boundaries between men and women. He coughed lightly and said calmly, "I'm telling the truth. You were planning to fight with that Yakuri Shisei, but in the end, that Yagyu Jubiai ambushed you from the side, and only then did you luckily succeed. Such a despicable act. Everyone saw it." Fu Junyu spat. "What do you know? You're just a good-for-nothing. A loss is a loss. I should have been prepared for this, but unfortunately, I was too impulsive and messed up my state of mind, and in the end, I brought shame to my sect." Song Qingshu couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. "Miss, you're young, but your knowledge is admirable. I thought you would find an objective reason, but with this kind of bearing, there are many experts who can't compare to you. Stop flattering me." Fu Junyu's expression finally relaxed. Her pink lips looked exceptionally charming under the candlelight. "Why are you looking for me?" I want to ask if the royal family of Goryeo has a deep hatred for the Wuchen group? Song Qingshu replied. Fu Junyu's expression turned cold. Are you suspecting our crown prince? I'm just asking. Thinking about the crown prince, Song Qingshu felt that no matter how he looked at it, the mournful look on his face was fake, and he could even feel the smile at the corner of his mouth. The royal family does have conflicts with the Wuchen family, but what kind of person is the crown prince? Why would he do such a thing? Fu Junyu shook her head, directly denying it. Song Qingshu wanted to ask again, but at this time, a delicate shout came from the door. What are you two doing? Looking back, Fu Junyu was dressed in white, standing at the door looking at the two of them. Only then did Fu Junyu realize that she was a little too close to the other party, and her face instantly turned red. She immediately let go of him, at the same time taking a few steps back. Nothing, I'm just here to see Miss Fu, Song Qingshu replied calmly. Fu Junyu ignored him, directly looking at her sister with an unfriendly gaze. Why do you tell outsiders everything? Fu Junyu stuck out her tongue, a little bashfully said, Actually, I didn't say anything. Fu Junyu snorted coldly, directly looking at Song Qingshu. You're not welcome here. Don't come and disturb my sister in the future. Song Qingshu shrugged. Since the other party had asked him to leave, he wouldn't force her to stay, so he walked to the room of the Crown Prince of Goryeo. Chapter 2163. Fu Junyi looked at her sister strangely. Didn't you hate this kind of playboy the most? Really? Fu Junyu's eyes were a little evasive. I think he's okay. He's different from other playboys. What's the difference? Fu Junyi snorted disdainfully. He still likes to get close to beautiful girls. Anyway, he's different. Fu Junyu touched the prism in her arms, but in the end, she did not take it out to share with her sister. At this time, Song Qingshu had already arrived at the Crown Prince's room. The Crown Prince received him, and the two of them chatted, exchanging the customs of Korea and the Southern Song dynasty. After a while, the Crown Prince of Korea said, Mr. Jia, you're not here to talk to me about these things, are you? Song Qingshu looked at him. I've been observing since I came in. Your Highness seems to be in a particularly good mood today. I'm in a good mood every day. The Crown Prince did not deny it. Song Qingshu said, but it's a bit unreasonable for the Crown Prince to be so happy after the death of two important people in the country. The Crown Prince of Korea said lightly, I know what you want to say, but everything needs evidence. Don't blame me if you can't find anything. Song Qingshu carefully looked at his eyes, but he could not find any flaws. Your Highness, you'd better be careful during this period. General Kim died suddenly after talking to me. I don't want you to repeat the same mistake. The Crown Prince's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening me? No. Song Qingshu shook his head. I'm just reminding you that the real threat is still hiding in the dark. The Crown Prince said lightly, you don't have to worry about it. Song Qingshu even wanted to use the soul transfer technique to torture his mind to see if he was the murderer, but he immediately suppressed this impulse. After all, he was the Crown Prince of country, and it was too risky to do it in broad daylight. Seeing that he couldn't get any useful information from them, Song Qingshu left the embassy of Korea and went straight to the palace. He still needed to discuss the marriage with the women. Little Red of the Central Plains, who had been following him in the dark, was a little annoying, but now that he was participating in the murder investigation, it made sense for him to go to the palace to report his work. He took out his waist tag and entered the palace openly. Little Red of the Central Plains had no choice but to wait outside the palace. Brother Song, Song Lang, Big Brother Qingshu. At this time, the three ladies were discussing the candidates for the betrothal contest in the imperial study. When they saw Song Qingshu's arrival, all of them were pleasantly surprised. Seeing the three women's heartfelt happiness, Song Qingshu also felt warm. Have you come to a conclusion? Yalu Nancian answered, for the time being, we've decided to arrange the matchups by drawing lots. This way we can stop people from gossiping. Song Qingshu frowned. Draw lots? If there are some strong people fighting at the beginning, the people from those countries will definitely be displeased. Li Qinglu pursed her lips and smiled. Don't worry, It's just drawing lots and name. In truth, the results are mostly arranged by us. Class 1 Hall has people in charge of this. Song Qing-shu widened his eyes. He couldn't help but sigh. He thought that only those lottery tickets had under-the-table manipulation. He didn't expect it to exist in this era. Mu Wanqing took out a scroll and unfurled it. First of all, the principle is to let the people from the diplomatic groups from different countries meet later. Otherwise, if they get eliminated in the first round, they won't be able to live with their dignity, and it'll easily cause diplomatic disputes. Song Qing-shu nodded. That's true, but where are we going to find so many cannon fodder? Yellow Nancian glanced at Li Qinglu and giggled. You're underestimating our little sister Qinglu's charm. I heard that the most beautiful princess of Western Xia is looking for a son-in-law. People from all over the country, young and old, are rushing here. Now, the entire Xingqing Manor is almost full. All the inns are full, and many of the houses have been rented out to the participants. Is that exaggerated? Song Qing-shu had been busy investigating the case these past few days, so he didn't notice the changes in the city. Li Qinglu raised her jade-like chin, trying to make her tone as normal as possible. However, she couldn't hide the smugness on her face. Those people don't have any self-awareness. All kinds of demons and monsters are running here to marry this princess. If they don't become cannon fodder, then what should they be? Yellow Nancian couldn't help but tease her. If those people outside knew that the rumored peerless, beautiful, and gentle princess is actually a merciless witch, they'd probably scatter a long time ago. Big brother Qing-shu, look, Sister Xianair is bullying me again. Li Qinglu shook Song Qing-shu's arm with a pitiful look. Song Qing-shu naturally knew about her background. He couldn't help but laugh. It's good enough that you don't bully others. Do you think you'll be bullied? Humph, Li Qinglu pouted, but she wasn't really angry. Song Qing-shu suddenly noticed a name and couldn't help but be surprised. Shuju? Can a monk also come to find spouse? According to the news, Shuju has already returned to secular life. Mu Wanqing explained. However, she still couldn't help but spit. These people are really not serious. They don't eat vegetarian and pray to Buddha. They just go around enjoying the fun. Song Qing-shu sighed. Actually, it's understandable. It's an era of great competition. Everyone is placing their bets. The Buddhist and Taoist sects are no exception. Based on historical experience, once they become the national religion of a dynasty, all kinds of temples, land, and offerings will be endless. Naturally, they have to work hard for this. Of course, this isn't completely out of selfishness. Whether it's the Buddhist or Taoist sects, they all want their beliefs to be accepted by more people. To spread their beliefs, it's far from enough to rely on themselves. Naturally, they can only rely on the power of the country. Li Qinglu's eyes lit up. Big brother Qing-shu, do you think those who opposed you before will come to lick your boots if you become the person most likely to unify the world one day? Song Qing-shu rubbed her head. I hope that day will come. Next, the women began to formulate the specific battle list. Song Qing-shu couldn't help them, so he left the palace. After he left, Li Qinglu put down the pen and paper in her hand. She wrinkled her nose and said, "We can't do this." Mu Wanqing and Yellow Nancian were confused. What's wrong? Why didn't you make him stay just now? Li Qinglu said angrily. Mu Wanqing and Yellow Nancian blushed. You didn't say anything either. I was worried about you guys. Li Qinglu bit her lip. Keeping each other in check like this isn't a solution. The three monks have no water to drink. In the end, those seductive bitches outside will take advantage of us. That's a bit exaggerated. Yellow Nancian said hesitantly. It's not like you don't know how good he is at seducing women. These days, he's probably been sleeping with someone. Li Qinglu curled her lips. Yellow Nancian wanted to say something else, but when she thought about what she saw these days, how he was flirting with the two women from Southern Song Dynasty and that little girl from Goryeo, she couldn't refute. That's why us three sisters need to work together. We can't fight among ourselves to benefit others. Li Qinglu clenched her fists. Yellow Nancian smiled. I don't have any objections. Mu Wanqing blushed. In the end, she replied in a small voice, I don't either. At this time, on the street, Song Qingshu couldn't help but sneeze. Who's talking about me behind my back? He heard that the world's heroes were gathering in the city, so he came to take a look. Sure enough, it was lively. Chapter 2164. The voice was very cold, and there was a trace of uncontrollable anger in it. Song Qingshu felt that it was somewhat familiar, and he walked towards the voice. A seductive figure entered his sight, and with that special veil, who else could it be other than the dual cultivation princess? Guzi Xian? I haven't seen her for a few days. Song Qingshu thought about how she ran into his room not long ago, and his heart couldn't help but beat faster. Little girl, don't you feel stuffy with a veil on such a hot day? Take it off and get some fresh air. A fat man said with a smile as he reached out to take off her veil. Guzi Xian's eyes flashed, and she kicked the back of his foot. The fat man screamed and lost his balance. His hand was twisted behind his back, and he knelt on the ground. Stop! A monk with a dignified appearance shouted. When he said the last word, he had already appeared next to the two people. Guzi Xian felt her vision blur and quickly tried to pull out her sword. Unfortunately, her wrist was numb, so how could she pull it out? The monk helped the fat man to the side and asked with concern, Prince, are you okay? The fat man was very angry. State Preceptor, help me catch this little bitch. The two people were naturally the Tubo Prince Zongzan and the Great Wheel Wisdom King, Zhou Emoji. Prince Zongzan had always liked to play around. When he was in Tubo, how could the city be so lively? Thus, he couldn't stay idle here. He had just gone to the galley guest house to join in the fun and then wandered around the city. Now, the Xingqing Prefecture had gathered all the heroes in the world to participate in the marriage contest. It could be considered the most lively city in the world these days. Prince Zongzan was naturally restless. He had been a big and burly man since he was young, so his energy was naturally extraordinary. His desire for women was also different from that of ordinary people. He had gone to the brothels in the city before, but he was a prince after all, so he naturally would not be interested in ordinary women. In addition, there were many heroes in the city, and the girls in the brothels were in short supply. So, after looking around, he felt bored and came out. He was just feeling depressed when he suddenly saw the princess of double cultivation on the street. Unfortunately, Guzi Xian's martial arts weren't weak. He quickly went up to tease her. Hearing his request, Jiumaji could not help but feel a bit awkward. Prince, I'm afraid that's not appropriate. Although he did not have a good reputation in Jianghu, he was still an eminent monk of the tantric sect and had never been close to women. Now that he was asked to bully a weak woman in public, he really could not bring himself to do it. What's wrong with that? The mission of the Imperial Preceptor is to protect me. I was injured by this woman just now. Shouldn't you help me vent my anger? Ouch, it hurts. As he said that, he had an exaggerated expression on his face as he covered the spot where he had just been kicked by the opponent. Not far away, Song Qingshu frowned and was about to step forward when a mocking voice came from the other side. We haven't seen each other for so many years, and you're still so disappointing. It's a shame for us Tubo to have a prince like you. It was obvious that this person was not someone to be trifled with. The crowd automatically moved aside, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. Soon, a group of people appeared. The person in the lead was tall and burly. The most eye-catching thing about him was his exaggerated long beard. However, Song Qingshu paid more attention to his large, bell-like eyes. They were full of spirit. It was obvious that he was a man full of energy and confidence. Next to him stood a foreign monk in red. His attire was similar to that of the great master Sangye that he had seen in the Qing kingdom. There were also 5 swordsmen standing next to him. Qinghai sect and Diansong sect. Song Qingshu had been in Jianghu for so many years. He could recognize these people at a glance. 3 of the swordsmen were dressed in the attire of the Qinghai sect, while the other 2 were from the Diansong sect. Let's find the book. Prince Zongzan's pupil shrank when he saw this group of people. Bully Nin Lingwen. What name is that? Song Qingshu was stunned at first. However, he quickly realized that the one who had a feud with Tubo was Si Luo, who was based in the Qingtang region. His original name was Bully Nanlingwen. However, people referred to him by his honorific title Si Luo. State Preceptor, help me take down this traitor. Prince Zongzan couldn't be bothered with the princess anymore. His eyes were filled with excitement. 100 years ago, Tubo was split into two royal lineages, fighting for the legitimacy of the throne. Si Siluo was one of the other lineages and had always been a thorn in the side of Tubo. Usually, Si Luo could not do anything to him because he was far away from Tubo and had a strong army. Now that he came alone, if he could kill him, wouldn't his prestige skyrocket? My father might even pass the position of Zan Pu to me in advance. All right, Jiumaji also knew how powerful he was. Without any hesitation, he turned into a blue shadow and grabbed Si Luo's shoulder. How dare you, traitor! The 5 swordsmen beside Si Luo instantly unsheathed their swords. Instantly, the sky was filled with sword shadows. 2 of them worked together to save their masters, while the other 3 waited for an opportunity to counterattack Jiumaji. Their swordsmanship was orderly, and their teamwork was perfect. However, Jiumaji pushed left and right, and used both his fists and legs. In just a few moves, he had broken the swords in the hands of the 5 swordsmen. The 3 swords of Qinghai and the double swords of Diansong are nothing more than this. As soon as he finished speaking, he shot the broken sword in his hand towards Si Luo's major acupoints. Song Qingshu nodded to himself. It had been a while since they last met, and Jiumaji's martial arts had improved a lot. When he swung his hand, he combined the essence of many unique skills, such as flower-pinching finger and multi-layered leaf finger. He was no longer limited to the 72 ultimate skills of Shaolin Temple like before. He seemed to have mastered all of them. Seeing that the 5 sword tips were about to hit Pai Baoyuo, the red-robed foreign monk next to him finally moved. His wide robe was like an unfathomable whirlpool, silently withdrawing the 5 menacing sword tips in the blink of an eye. Kasaya, exorcism? No, there are many differences. It seems that all the kung fu in the world is the same. Song Qingshu sighed with emotion. Li Lizuan, you and I belong to the Tantric Buddhism. Why are you helping the evildoer? Jiumaji stared at him with a little fear in his eyes. The foreign monk in red laughed and said, You are from the Ningma Temple, and I am from the Zhenyan school. How can we be the same? Among the 4 schools of the Tantric Buddhism, the other 3 schools have found their own masters. Only the Ningma Temple is stubborn. Look at the prince you are supporting. Only you are so stubborn. Jiumaji snorted coldly and said, Today, I will clean up the sect. With a flash, he attacked Li Lizuan. Li Lizuan did not dare to be careless. He also attacked, and the 2 sides were instantly engaged in a fierce battle. Song Qingshu watched coldly from the side. The Tantric Buddhism was indeed full of masters. Although Li Lizuan's kung fu was slightly weaker than Jiumaji's, Jiumaji would need more than 100 moves to defeat him. Stop! When the 2 sides were locked in a fierce battle, a soft female voice suddenly came. Song Qingshu looked in the direction of the voice and saw a carriage slowly approaching. The window was covered with a layer of gauze, but with Song Qingshu's cultivation, how could a mere gauze stop him? Chapter 2165. Even through the curtains and gauze, the lady's snow-white skin could still be seen. Song Qingshu thought that Tubo was famous for its strong ultraviolet rays, yet she could still be so fair. She must have lived in seclusion and rarely went out. Her words were gentle and had a dignified and demure temperament that made people want to protect her. Princess, seeing her arrival, both parties stopped fighting. Jiumaji and Prince Zongzan bowed. On the other side, Si Siluo also smiled and cupped his hands. Greetings, Princess. Even though Si Siluo was younger than him, according to seniority, Si Siluo was his elder. There was no need to be impolite and scold him over such a small matter. Princess Jincheng made a sound of agreement and continued, Even though both sides have differing ideologies, this is ultimately an internal matter of Tubo. Now that the heroes of the world have gathered in Xingqing Manor, Do you want the world to laugh at us, Tubo? Cecilio secretly curled his lips, thinking that it was a woman's opinion. However, Geomaji was highly skilled in martial arts, so he could use this as an excuse. You are right, princess. Prince Zongzan wanted to say something, but was pulled back by Geomaji, who whispered a few words in his ear. He knew that Cecilio was protected by Li Zuan and the experts from Qinghai and Diansong, so it would be difficult to kill him. It is rare for princess to have a chance to leave Tibet. After the betrothal contest, you can visit Qingtang City on the way. Cecilio said maliciously. He did not expect princess to become more and more beautiful, so he was reluctant to carry out his plan. However, this thought only flashed past his mind. As an ambitious and ruthless person of his generation, he naturally wouldn't let beauty ruin his important matters. Princess Jincheng smiled. When there is a chance in the future, Zanpu and I will come to Qingtang City to patrol. At that time, Prince will not avoid us. She knew that Cecilio's words implied that she would be captured and sent to Qingtang City, so she said that Zanpu would lead the army to recover Qingtang City in the future. Cecilio laughed awkwardly. Princess is indeed smart, but Zanpu is old and may not have the energy and ability. His pronunciation was very strange, especially on the last two words. His tone made it difficult for people not to connect it to something. As expected, Princess Jincheng's face turned cold. She no longer paid him any attention. She laughed loudly and swaggered away with her people. Prince Zongzan and Geomaji looked at the Western Xiao warriors who had rushed over after hearing the news. In the end, they didn't continue to make trouble, but the resentment in their eyes could still be clearly seen. Is that young Master Jia from the Great Song? Song Qingshu was idling at the side when he suddenly heard Princess Jincheng's voice coming from the carriage. Hearing his words, the dual cultivator Princess Gu Zixian turned around in surprise. When she saw that it was him, her eyes lit up. Greetings, Princess Jincheng. Song Qingshu had no choice but to walk to the side of the carriage and salute the princess. The etiquette in the Southern Song dynasty was strict. Since the princess had spoken, how could he not respond as Jia Baoyu? The carriage fell into a period of silence. After a long time, a soft sigh was heard. I haven't heard such a title in a long time. This princess smells so good. Song Qingshu secretly clicked his tongue and stood in front of the carriage. He faintly smelled a delicate fragrance. It was different from the fragrance commonly seen in the Central Plains, but it was not as strong and direct as the fragrance of foreign lands. It was a very special fragrance that people would never forget after smelling it. Young Master Jia has been in the limelight recently. You have been recognized by the first-class hall of the Western Xia and were invited to help investigate the case of the Goryeo ambassador's murder. It can be said that you have raised the prestige of the Great Song dynasty. When Princess Jincheng mentioned the Great Song dynasty, there was a hint of pride and nostalgia in her tone. Reading house, Princess, you flatter me. Song Qingshu thought of the last time he met her in Tubo. She was also very concerned about the Southern Song dynasty. It seemed that she was married to another country and missed her hometown. How is everything in the Great Song dynasty? Princess Jincheng suddenly asked. Song Qingshu was stunned. How could he answer such a question? If it was in the dead of night, he would not be against talking to this beautiful princess. However, this was obviously not possible. It was obvious from the vigilant eyes of Prince Zongzan and Geomaji. It is not convenient to talk about many things here. Now that the Great Song Dynasty's ambassador group is also in the city, why don't you go there and ask? Song Qingshu paused and said, in addition, there is a relative of the princess in the ambassador group. I think the princess should be very willing to see her. Really? Princess Jincheng was a little moved. After thinking for a moment, she said, I wonder if young master can bring me there. Song Qingshu was stunned. He thought to himself, are you relying on me? She should not have heard of Jia Baoyu's past reputation. Otherwise, she would not have asked me to lead the way. Of course, if Song Qingshu refused and the news spread to the Southern Song dynasty, there would be a lot of trouble. Princess Jincheng nodded and said to Prince Zongzan and Geomaji, Nation advisor, Zongzan, you two go back first. I will go visit my relatives in my hometown. Zongzan said hurriedly. Let's go with you? Princess Jinsheng immediately refused. We are all women. It is not convenient for you to go. Hearing what she said, Zongzan couldn't continue to move forward. However, Jiumaji, who was on the side, thought it through. Recently, the city has not been peaceful. 2 important people died in Goryeo. If Princess encounters danger, Princess Jinsheng smiled and said, Don't worry. I have guards with me. Moreover, the city is very lively now. The people from Shisha's Class 1 Hall are patrolling everywhere. Would someone really dare to commit murder on the street? After all, she was the princess. Since she had made up her mind, Jiumaji could not say anything more. He could only command the Tantra disciples to follow and protect her. Young master, please get in the carriage. A gentle invitation came from the carriage. If they were still in the Southern Song dynasty, Princess Jinsheng would definitely not be in the same carriage with a man. Even if the Tubo people were more open, she had never done this. However, she felt close to people from her homeland today. In addition, Jia Baoyu looked like a teenager. She only treated him as a junior and did not think much of it. Song Qing-shu was startled. He had never expected that she would invite him like this. However, as a man, it was not difficult for him to accept being in the same room with a beauty, let alone a beauty of such a noble status. Young master, can I go with you? Gu Zixian ran over and said, Who is this lady? Princess Jinsheng looked at the girl beside the carriage in surprise. Even though she was wearing a veil, she could still feel her amazing beauty. She is Princess Gu Zixian of the Dual Cultivation House of Wushuang City. She is my friend. Song Qing-shu hesitated. I see. Come on in. Princess Jinsheng was an experienced person. How could she not see the affection in Gu Zixian's eyes? She thought that the two of them had fallen in love. She could not help but feel happy to see a man from her homeland with such a beautiful woman. She thought that the talents of the Song dynasty were indeed popular. Young master? Gu Zixian was worried that she would offend him by making a decision on her own. She looked at Song Qing-shu carefully. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, Since Princess Jinsheng has no objections, Lady Gu can come with us. Then he extended his hand and helped her into the carriage. Chapter 2166. Jiumaji comforted him. Don't worry, Prince. I think the princess only treats him as a nephew. Moreover, there is another woman with him. I think nothing will happen. What is the background of that veiled woman? Prince Ming, please help me find out. Prince Zongzan could not help but swallow his saliva as the elegant and beautiful figure of the woman appeared in his mind. Jiumaji frowned. Prince, we are here for the marriage. Don't lose sight of the bigger picture because of small gain. If the Shisha people hear about this, it will be disadvantageous to you. Hearing his harsh tone, Zongzan had no choice but to reluctantly snort and say, Well, I'll go look for this beautiful chick after I marry the princess of Shisha. Anyway, it seems that she knows that man surnamed Jia. The monk can run, but the temple can't. At this time, in the carriage, Song Qing-shu's nose was a little itchy. He wanted to sneeze, but couldn't. What's wrong, Master Jia? Are you not feeling well? Princess Jinsheng asked with concern. I'm fine. Maybe someone is bad-mouthing me behind my back. Song Qing-shu smiled. He finally had the opportunity to observe the woman in front of him closely. She had snow-white skin, a jade-like nose, and soft, oval face, which matched her temperament very well. She was indeed a dignified and gentle woman. However, Song Qing-shu's eyes fell on her slender and beautiful eyebrows and moist red lips. Especially when compared with the tan tubo made beside her, her skin looked even fairer. The more he looked at her, the more he felt that every part of her was full of temptation. Song Qing-shu could not help but secretly complain. Have I been a vegetarian for too long? Why is my mind full of nonsense? Princess Jinsheng's smooth and white face showed a faint blush when she noticed his gaze. She turned her face to the other side unnaturally. Miss Gu, Your Wushuang city is thousands of miles away from the Great Song. How did you know each other? Princess Jincheng used this to cover up her embarrassment. Gu Zixian's lips curled up as if she had thought of something wonderful. It's like this. We were attacked by the Mongolians. Fortunately, we met. She told the story of being attacked and being rescued by the Great Song's diplomatic mission. Song Qingshu was shocked at first. When he heard that she did not reveal her identity, he let out a long sigh of relief. The Mongolians are really aggressive. Princess Jincheng listened with great interest and kept asking for details. Gu Zixian also patiently answered her questions. Looking at Princess Jincheng's excited expression, Song Qingshu recalled the first time he saw her. He felt that her eyes revealed traces of defeat. Now, she was in high spirits. It was as if she was a caged canary, beautiful but without freedom. She was full of curiosity about the outside world. Listening to these stories along the way, the carriage had unknowingly arrived outside the Southern Song residence. Knowing that the Tufan princess had arrived, everyone in the embassy hurriedly came out to welcome her and happened to see Song Qingshu getting out of her carriage. Shui Baochai jumped in fright. Baoyu, why did you run to Wang Fei's carriage? Quickly get down. The identity of the Tufan princess was special. She was also the only princess of the Great Song dynasty who was related by marriage. Now that the Jia family was in a precarious situation, the royal family did not touch them because they were concerned about the overall situation. If someone took the opportunity to make a complaint, Jia Baiyu would be in trouble. Nothing. I call him up. Princess Jincheng got down the carriage with the help of her maid. Her gentle smile was like a spring breeze. Greetings, Wang Fei. A group of people hurriedly bowed to her. The yellow-shirt girl looked at her with an excited expression. No need to be so courteous. Everyone could just call me princess. It sounds more intimate. Seeing an old friend from her hometown, Princess Jincheng naturally did not want to address her as a foreigner. Learning institution in the past, the Song dynasty's princess was called Empress Concubine. In reality, Emperor Huizong of Song changed the inherited title of princess to Empress Concubine. Not long after, the shame of Jinkong happened. At that time, people were somewhat superstitious and felt that the title Empress Concubine was somewhat inauspicious. Thus, it was naturally changed back to princess. Are you Ying Luo? Princess Jincheng asked softly as she supported the yellow-shirt girl. Previously in the carriage, she had already heard from Song Qingshu. Yes. Seeing her relatives, the yellow-shirt girl could not help but feel gratified. Princess Jincheng was not her biological sister. She was originally the daughter of a prince. Later, because of marriage, she was conferred the title of princess. In terms of seniority, Ying Luo was her aunt. However, the age difference between them was not too big. After all, their bloodlines were connected. One had experienced many dangers and tribulations at a young age, while the other had married far away at a young age. When they saw each other, they immediately resonated with each other and looked at each other with tears in their eyes. The two of them quickly walked into the inner room. They both had a stomach full of things to say. Dual cultivator princess. Shui Pan and the others naturally could not follow. Just as they were feeling bored, they suddenly noticed Gu Zixian, and their worries turned to joy. Young Master Shui. The dual cultivator princess nodded slightly. During this time, she had investigated a lot of information about her benefactor. It was not difficult to find out that Jia Baoyu and Shui Pan were best friends. She did not know the relationship between her benefactor and Shui Pan. She was worried that their relationship was not shallow and did not want to offend her benefactor's friend. Hearing the unprecedented gentleness in her tone, Shui Pan almost went crazy with joy. She smiled at me. She actually smiled at me. Is she interested in me? In the end, she was attracted by my brilliance and martial prowess. But our identities are a problem. I wonder if my father will agree to marry her. But she is still a princess. It is not a disgrace to our Shui family. At that moment, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. He had even thought of the name of their first child. Seeing Shui Pan's perverted look, Song Qingshu was speechless. Shui Pan was the son of a top-notch family. Did he have to be like this? Gu Zixian also felt uncomfortable under Shui Pan's gaze. She subconsciously hid behind Song Qingshu. Shui Pan wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth and asked enthusiastically, "Princess, what business do you have here?" Gu Zixian pointed at Song Qingshu and said, "I came to find him." Shui Pan's smile instantly froze on his face. He couldn't help but pull Song Qingshu to the side and said fiercely, "Does my sister know you're so coquettish?" Song Qingshu looked to the side guiltily. Fortunately, Shui Baochai had followed the yellow-clothed woman into the house. Otherwise, it would be even harder to explain. Ahem, it's not what you think. She took the initiative to find you. What else could it be? Shui Pan felt his heart bleeding. Song Qingshu didn't know how to explain, so he threw the ball to Gu Zixian. "What business do you have with me?" Gu Zixian wasn't stupid. She could tell from the two's reactions that she had brought trouble to her benefactor. However, she reacted quickly and immediately said, "I heard that young Master Jia was in charge of investigating the Goryeo murder case. I happened to have some clues and wanted to see if I could help him." Hearing this, Shui Pan's worry turned to joy. "What kind of clues?" Chapter 2167. Is that so? Shui Pan couldn't hide his disappointment, but he knew that Jia Baoyu had recently taken on a lot of work and couldn't find a reason to refute. Song Qingshu was also overjoyed. His investigation had reached an impasse recently, and he didn't expect to find a new breakthrough from Gu Zixian. He couldn't help asking curiously, "What is it?" Gu Zixian looked left and right with an awkward expression. "There are too many people here. Then let's go to my room." Song Qingshu nodded and pulled her hand to run to his room. Shui Pan's eyes almost popped out of his head. Damn, why are our hands together? He wanted to chase after them, but the two of them disappeared in the blink of an eye. He didn't even have time to say what he wanted to say. "I must let my little sister see the true face of this scum." After returning to his room, Song Qingshu hurriedly asked, "Princess, what clues did you find?" What responded to him was a pair of fragrant and soft lips. It was unknown when Gu Zixian had taken off her veil, revealing her indescribably beautiful face. Song Qingshu was startled, but he still instinctively hugged her soft and slender body, feeling the exaggerated elasticity of youth. After a long time, their lips parted and Gu Zixian's snow-white cheeks flushed red. Her beautiful eyes were moist, and her long eyelashes lightly trembled. "Benefactor, I've been telling myself to stay calm these past few days and not be a moth flying into a flame. But in the dead of night, your figure kept appearing in my mind, and my longing for you grew stronger and stronger. In the end, I couldn't bear it anymore and decided to go out to find you. I didn't expect to run into that fat prince of Tubo on the way, and I also didn't expect to run into you. All of this makes me feel like everything is destined." Song Qingshu was greatly moved when he heard this. He was clearly aware in his heart that Gu Zixian's feelings were so intense mainly because she'd always been living in despair for the future. She'd always hoped to escape the cage of an arranged marriage, but unfortunately, the responsibilities she carried prevented her from taking that step. Only when he appeared did her stagnant life finally have color. An obedient girl from a young age would be much more daring than ordinary people when she became rebellious. Thinking of this, Song Qingshu felt even more pity in his heart. He gently stroked her soft hair and took the initiative to kiss her. Sensing his actions, Gu Zixian was wild with joy. That night, she had taken the initiative to look for him, but the other party's reaction wasn't as enthusiastic as she had imagined, making her a bit worried. Now that the other party had finally taken the initiative, she could finally put down the apprehension in her heart, and her whole body was filled with a sweet feeling. "Can you take off your mask? This is a bit strange." Gu Zixian's body went limp, but she still tried her best to stop him. "All right." Song Qingshu's reply was concise and to the point. Right now, he didn't have the time to say anything else. Oh, the two young bodies were passionately entangled together. One was deeply in love, while the other was hot-blooded. Both of them wished they could rub the other into their bodies. Soon, their clothes fluttered down like butterflies, revealing the beautiful scenery of youth. Ah, Guzi's immortal flower branch trembled, and she couldn't help but cry out. Dong 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 dong. At this moment, there was an urgent knock on the door. The two people in a room couldn't help but pause and subconsciously look in the direction of the door. Princess, are you all right? Shuepan's anxious voice sounded. Guzi Xian was both embarrassed and angry. She lowered her voice and whispered in Song Qingshu's ear, "This friend of yours is really." Song Qingshu gently brushed her sweat-dampened hair. "Who told you to be so beautiful? Which man wouldn't be moved by you?" Hearing him praise her, Guzi Xian's heart was filled with sweetness, but it was quickly replaced by shame. "But I don't like him. If he wasn't your friend, I wouldn't be so nice to him." Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. Shuepan is actually a wonderful person. There's no need to care about him. However, Shuepan clearly didn't think so. Seeing that there was no response, the knocking on the door became even more urgent. Princess, Bao Yu, are you bullying the princess?" Song Qingshu's expression was strange. He stared at the delicate beauty below him, thinking that this was a kind of bullying. Suppressing her embarrassment, Guzi Xian said to the outside, "Thank you for your concern, young Master Shui. I'm fine." That's good. Shuepan laughed. "I'll wait for you outside. If Bao Yu dares to bully you, just call out, and I'll help you teach him a lesson." "There's really no need. Young Master Shui, you can go to your own things." Guzi Xian's eyes widened. They were in the room. How could he do it outside? It's fine. I'm quite free anyways, so it's fine to wait." Shuepan hurriedly replied. Guzi Xian was on the verge of tears. She looked at her lover. Why is he like this? Just ignore him. Song Qingshu smiled and continued to bury his head. Guzi Xian gritted her teeth and grabbed the bedding tightly. Her entire body was extremely nervous. After an unknown amount of time, Shui Baochai came back from Princess Jincheng's place and found her brother in a daze. She couldn't help but ask curiously, why aren't you going in?" "The dual cultivator princess and Bao Yu are discussing something inside. It's not convenient for me to go in," Shuepan answered. With Shui Baochai's intelligence, she immediately reacted, "It's probably because the princess doesn't want to see you. Big brother, she clearly has no interest in you. Don't waste your energy on her." "Who said so? She's always incomparably cold to others. She only smiles when she's with me." Shuepan blinked as the image of her sweet smile appeared in his mind. For a moment, he couldn't control himself. Shui Baochai curled her lips. She smiles even more when she's with Bao Yu. Shuepan's smile gradually froze as if he had been shot by an arrow. Why aren't they coming out after chatting for so long? Shui Baochai revealed a suspicious expression. She wasn't like her brother who would obediently wait because of a goddess's words. She couldn't help but feel a little sour when she thought of Jia Bao Yu and a beautiful girl in the same room. Just as she was about to knock on the door, it was already open from the inside. Jia Bao Yu and the dual cultivator princess walked out. Shui Baochai frowned slightly. She felt that the two of them looked strange, but she couldn't tell where to blame them. The only thing worth noticing was that the dual cultivator princess's face wasn't as pale as usual. There seemed to be a hint of pink. Song Qingshu coughed and rushed to speak first. "The princess brought me crucial information that will be very helpful in solving the case. I'll send her back now." Shui Baochai wanted to ask something, but seeing how mysterious the two were, she guessed that they weren't willing to reveal anything. She also didn't care about Goryo's matters, so she didn't pursue the matter. Chapter 2168. Guzi Xian immediately blushed and hurriedly explained, "I accidentally twisted my ankle just now. I'm fine. I'll bring some medicine to the princess later." Shuepan glared at Song Qingshu. "How did you take care of Bao Yu? The princess was injured because of you." Song Qingshu opened his mouth, wanting to persuade him to give up. However, he didn't say anything in the end. There was no way to explain something like this. Guzi Xian's face was as red as an apple. She pursed her lips tightly and didn't say anything. Song Qingshu knew that she was embarrassed and hurriedly said a few words to the Shui siblings before leaving with her. Gu Zixian had originally said that she would go back alone, but Song Qingshu was worried about her safety on the road alone. She had previously been harassed by Prince Zongzan on the streets because of her beauty and figure. If she encountered something similar again, she might not be so lucky. Furthermore, the two of them had just had that kind of relationship. She was currently at her most sensitive and vulnerable. How could he let her go back alone? Gu Zixian was extremely happy to see him take the initiative to send her off. Her body was soft and tender the entire way in the carriage. She obediently lay in her lover's arms and spoke of her love. Song Qingshu hugged her soft and alluring body and listened to the girl's passionate words. He almost couldn't control himself. In order to avoid being discovered by the Shui siblings, he ended it too hastily. He didn't have the time to enjoy himself to his heart's content. Unfortunately, they were on the streets. Although the other party most likely wouldn't reject him, it was hard to guarantee that the girl wouldn't think of him as a plaything. Song Qingshu didn't want to hurt the delicate heart of a young girl, so he suppressed the desire in his heart. However, just hugging her delicate body and smelling the faint fragrance on her body was already a very pleasant thing. Unknowingly, they returned to the Zungar embassy. They bumped into the young city lord of Peerless City, De Guming, who was returning from the streets. Seeing his fiancée with another young man, his face darkened. What have you been doing? Gu Zixian was originally immersed in the sweetness and tenderness of her lover, but when she suddenly saw him, she couldn't help but feel nauseous. What does what I do have to do with you? Why do you care? Song Qingshu witnessed with his own eyes how she changed from an obedient little woman to a frosty appearance in just a second. He couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. At the same time, thinking that she was only so gentle to him, he couldn't help but feel proud and complacent. You are my fiancé. Why can't I care? De Guming was also annoyed. Gu Zixian revealed a look of disgust. What fiancé? We haven't even officially set up an engagement. De Guming snorted coldly. It doesn't matter if you're willing or not. The successor of the House of Dual Cultivators has to marry into our peerless city. Sooner or later, you'll be mine. With that, he stormed off angrily. Gu Zixian bit her lips and thought back to what he had said. Thinking about her destined future, she couldn't help but feel sad, and her eyes immediately turned red. Seeing that she was on the verge of tears, Song Qingshu could guess what she was thinking. He comforted her gently. Don't worry. With me around, a mere peerless city can't dictate your fate. Gu Zixian shook her head. This is different. I have the responsibility of the House of Dual Cultivators on my shoulders. Some things are destined to be done by me. Song Qingshu frowned slightly. Just as he was about to say something, the wife of the House of Dual Cultivators rushed out after hearing the news. She had red lips, perky breasts, plump buttocks, and a graceful figure that most girls couldn't reach. What just happened? Nothing much. It's just that annoying De Guming came to pester me again. Gu Zixian curled her lips. The wife of the House of Dual Cultivators frowned. Our House of Dual Cultivators and Peerless City have been friends for generations. Don't be too disrespectful. She still wanted to say something, but she suddenly noticed the faint blush on her daughter's face and the inadvertent flirtatious expression on her face. She couldn't help but change her expression. She hurriedly pulled her daughter into the house and said, "Come with me." After walking a few steps, she turned around and looked at Song Qingshu. She hesitated for a moment. "Young master, come in as well." Song Qingshu guessed that she must have noticed something. However, the current him naturally wasn't as unconfident as the youths in his previous life. He calmly followed her in. After entering the inner room, the wife of the House of Dual Cultivators chased all the servants out, leaving only the three of them. Have you lost your virginity? The wife of the House of Dual Cultivators stared at her daughter with a burning gaze. Gu Zixian's face turned slightly red. She glanced at her lover. "Mother, why are you asking me such an embarrassing question in front of others? Don't change the subject. Do you have it or not?" The lady's expression was a little solemn. Gu Zixian bit her lips tightly, her hands unconsciously rubbing a corner of her clothes. After a long time, she finally responded with a soft voice. The madam wanted to scold her, but the moment she opened her mouth, it turned into a long sigh. What a sin, what a sin. Didn't I tell you before that even if you don't like dugaming, you can always find your true love after marriage? But now that you've lost your virginity, how can you hide it? I'm afraid the friendship between Peerless City and the dual cultivator's residents for 100 years will turn into enemies. Song Qing-shu, who was at the side, was confused as he listened. How could a mother educate her daughter like this? It seemed that the people of the western region were indeed different from the people of the Central Plains in terms of moral values. Gu Zixian's body trembled. She clearly knew the consequences of this matter, but she didn't know how to deal with it. Song Qing-shu coughed lightly. Actually, you don't have to worry too much about Peerless City's reaction. The madam stopped him from continuing. Young master, you've misunderstood. We aren't afraid of Peerless City. Even if young master doesn't interfere, the dual cultivator's residence's strength alone is enough to contend with Peerless City. The main reason we're doing this is because the ancestors of the dual cultivator's residence owe Peerless City a huge favor. We need to repay this favor to comfort the spirits of our ancestors in heaven. Hearing the madam mention the ancestors, Song Qing-shu really didn't know how to persuade her. After a long time, the madam let out a long sigh. Fine, we'll take it one step at a time. Mother, Gu Zixian's eyes reddened. Her voice was a little choked up. The madam gently caressed her daughter's head. Suddenly, she thought of something, and her expression changed. Oh yes, just now, when you used the dual cultivator's mental cultivation method. Gu Zixian blinked her eyes and was about to cry. I was too nervous just now and forgot. The madam immediately became anxious. That is the most important step in cultivating our mental cultivation method. If you don't do it, it will cause you to be unable to progress for the rest of your life. The madam paced back and forth, clearly very anxious. What a waste, what a waste. Cultivating the dual cultivator's mental cultivation method for more than 10 years has the effect of bringing the dead back to life. It is extremely beneficial to both sides. No, while there is still time, you should cultivate again and see how much of the effect can be restored. Before her daughter left, she was still a virgin, but when she came back, she changed. She naturally knew that this had just happened. Chapter 2169. Gu Zixian's snow-white face was now as red as a persimmon. Mother, what are you saying? Even though Song Qing-shu was used to seeing things, he still felt that the madam's suggestion was a bit outrageous. The madam's oval face was also slightly red. It was clear that she also felt that saying this was a bit shameful. I know it's not appropriate to say these things, but it's really important. The young master doesn't know, but you should know how important it is. Gu Zixian had cultivated the dual cultivation technique since she was young, so she was naturally clear about it. She was extremely vexed over why she had forgotten. She stealthily glanced at Song Qing-shu, her expression incredibly bashful. Her previous initiative seemed to have used up all of her courage, and now she couldn't even say any words of invitation. As a considerate man, how could Song Qing-shu make things difficult for a woman? He nodded. The princess is as beautiful as a goddess, so this is something I can't ask for more. Gu Zixian turned her head, and the corners of her lips rose slightly. There was a mixture of shyness and joy at her lover's praise. The madam's heart jumped when she heard their words of love. She quickly said, don't go back to your room. There are too many people on the road, and it's not good to be seen. Just stay in my room. I'll go out and help you keep people away. She then ran out as if she was escaping. Song Qing-shu looked around the room. All the decorations were quiet and dignified. However, there was a faint rose fragrance in the room that seemed to reveal the passion in the owner's heart. What are you looking at? Gu Zixian's curious voice came into his ear. Song Qing-shu's heart jumped, and he quickly said, No, nothing. Looking at her fair and rosy skin that was as tender and beautiful as a fresh flower, he was already a little restless on the way here. How could he hold himself back now? He grabbed her legs and carried her horizontally. Guzi Xian let out a soft moan and buried her head in his chest. Now, why is this bed so soft? Song Qingshu was suddenly very curious. This bed was much softer than normal. Guzi Xian grunted and replied in a small voice, "My mother's skin is very sensitive and is very afraid of hard things, so the bed is much softer than normal. This physique is quite special." Song Qingshu smelled the special fragrance on the bed and couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. Big Brother Song. Gu Zixian's soft snort pulled him back to reality. Song Qingshu's face turned red. He wondered what kind of nonsense he was thinking about. Brother Song, pay attention to the circulation of my true qi. Don't resist. Gu Zixian endured her shyness and said. Song Qingshu nodded. He was actually an expert in this field, so he naturally knew the principles behind it. Gu Zixian shyly smiled. She opened her snow-white arms and tightly hugged her lover. After a while, the wife came back from patrolling the area. She was about to ask her daughter when she suddenly heard the sound coming from inside. She couldn't help but blush. This girl really doesn't know how to be quiet. What if someone else hears? She originally wanted to leave, but she was worried that someone would come over and hear and leak the secret. She could only suppress her heartbeat and guard the door, not far away. At first, she was thinking about whether her daughter remembered the circulation method at the critical moment. On the other hand, she was worried about whether her current remedy would be effective. But later, as she heard the intermittent sounds of the situation inside the room, her heart was already in chaos. She had lived alone for more than 10 years and had always lived a pure life. But after all, she was at the peak of a woman. In the dead of night, she would also feel cold and lonely. However, those thoughts would often be driven out of her mind by reason. First, literature. But now that the sound coming from the room was so moving, the wife couldn't help but think of the strange attraction she felt when she approached Song Qingshu. Once this thought appeared, she could no longer control her thoughts. Why would I think of these things? The wife touched her face with her hand and felt that it was burning. After some time, when Song Qingshu came out of the room, he happened to see the wife sitting in a pavilion not far away. "Hello, madam." Song Qingshu felt a little strange. He had just slept with someone's daughter. How should he greet her? The wife didn't stand up. Her legs under the stone table were slightly trembling. "Why are you alone? Where's Xian?" Song Qingshu was a little embarrassed. She's a little tired. She's resting inside." "Oh." The wife finally reacted. No one would be able to hold on for so long. The two of them stared at each other, and the atmosphere suddenly became a little awkward. Just now, how was it? The wife finally returned to the question she was most concerned about. Song Qingshu was stunned. "Why are you talking to me about this?" He thought it was a custom in the Western region, so he could only answer, "Your daughter has a refined appearance and a delicate body. Well, I naturally feel that she's perfect." The wife blinked. At first, she was still confused. Later, she finally understood what he was talking about. Her face instantly turned red. "Who asked you about that?" "I'm asking about the effect of the dual cultivation method." "Ah." Song Qingshu was instantly embarrassed and hurriedly replied, "Your manners mental cultivation method is indeed unique, and it has produced very good results. Even my own cultivation has become much purer. As for the princess, her cultivation should have improved even more." The dual cultivation method was indeed of the same origin as the Joy Zen method. When used together, it had an effect of twice the result with half the effort. The feeling of the spirit and the body becoming one was even more enjoyable. From his point of view, if he could recover from the serious injury he had just suffered, the dual cultivation method was indeed extraordinary. "I'll take my leave first. I'll come back to see you later." Song Qingshu felt too embarrassed to stay here, so he hurriedly left after saying this. Looking at his fleeing figure, the wife couldn't help but laugh. She got up to ask her daughter, but as soon as she got up, her legs gave way and she almost fell down. For a moment, her face became even redder. After Song Qingshu came out from a mansion of dual cultivators, as the saying goes, When a person encounters a happy event, his spirit is refreshed. He seemed to be walking a lot more briskly. Recalling the scene from earlier, Gu Zixian's boundless gentleness and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl into a satisfied smile. Suddenly, his expression froze, but he didn't stop. Instead, he deliberately walked to a nearby alley. When he walked to a shadowy place, a bright long knife appeared out of thin air and slashed at his neck. Song Qingshu reached out and caught the long saber with 2 fingers. The masked man in the dark was shocked. He hurriedly threw something that looked like a smoke bomb and disappeared in an instant. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.